Chapter 2247. A day later, the pillar of heaven's mountains regained its peace. None of the disciples were injured, but they had used up too much of their magic power, so they were all cultivating. The broken ground on the mountain peak, many of the houses and palaces that had fallen were also repaired by the craftsmen. Only the 4 elders who were seriously injured would have to go into seclusion to recuperate for a few more months. Other than that, everything was back to normal and orderly. Ji Tianqing and Huanglong Daoist started to get busy. The 2 of them had to work together to set up a few sacred great arrays. 2 of the sacred arrays were to strengthen the defense, while the other 2 were to support the heavenly array. This was a huge and tedious project that would take at least 10 days to complete. Furthermore, it would consume a huge amount of spiritual stones and resources. Luckily, the Pillar of Heaven's mountains was getting more and more prosperous. There was some surplus in the treasury, enough for Ji Tianqing to set up a few arrays. 10 days later, the 4 sacred arrays were set up. Ji Tianqing spent another day to connect the Star Divine Furnace and the Heavenly Array. In this way, the Heavenly Dipper and Earthly Terminus arrays formed by the 108 mountain peaks within the Pillar of Heaven's mountains continuously supplied energy to the Star Divine Furnace. And the Star Divine Furnace also supplied energy to the Heavenly Array, so that the Heavenly Array would never run out of energy. Unless someone could destroy the Heavenly Dipper and Earthly Terminus arrays, the Pillar of Heaven's mountains would gather the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and become an indestructible fortress. Even if the martial god came personally, he might not be able to break through the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. After dealing with the defensive array, Ji Tianqing entered the Star Divine Furnace again. After the warship bombarded the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, he felt that the situation was critical and the pressure was increasing. He only wanted to smelt the illusionary spirit star core as soon as possible, and then use the 9th heaven cauldron in the Divine Weapon Pavilion to help the Sword of Burial of Heaven become a divine weapon. Only when the Sword of Burial of Heaven becomes a divine weapon would he be qualified to fight against Yu and the ancestral demon god. What made him feel gratified was that Qian Yu and the Black Dragon did not slack off. They had both mastered the technique that he gave them, and were concentrating on smelting the illusionary spirit star core. After more than a month of smelting, the illusionary spirit star core was obviously smaller, and it was only 180 miles long. The surface of the originally pitch-black stellar core also lit up with a silver light, and it was recovering its luster. Ji Tianqing encouraged Qian Yu and the Black Dragon. Then he personally cast a secret technique to refine the star core. Even though he estimated that he would only need 3 years to successfully smelt the star core, he still couldn't do anything about it. However, he couldn't wait any longer. 3 years was still too long. If there was a miracle, he really hoped that the star core would be successfully smelted tomorrow. In the southern part of Dark North Mountain, in the 100 Origin City of the Jingshan region, in the majestic and dignified city lord's mansion, and Yu's study, he was standing by the window, looking out with a gloomy expression. In the study, the black armored guard captain stood respectfully, not daring to even breathe loudly. The guard captain's left front leg and right rear leg had been chopped off, leaving only 2 legs on the ground. It looked particularly comical. Previously, when he had fled back to 100 Origin City, his injuries had been even worse, and he was in an extremely sorry state. After 10 days of recuperation, his injuries had stabilized, and he had recovered 60% of his strength. After a long silence, Yu spoke in the strange tribe's language and muttered to himself in a low voice. I never thought that the leader of the Pillar of Heaven's mountain, Ji Tianqing, who killed millions of demon tribesmen, would be that guy. In just 2 months, his strength has increased by several times. It is a miracle. No wonder Ling Xian asked me to kill Ji Tianqing before agreeing to cooperate. That guy is indeed extraordinary. He is only a martial sage, but he is invincible among the martial sages. I only hate that I didn't take him seriously back then, and actually let him escape with his life. If I had killed him on the spot at the illusory spirit star core, none of this would have happened. The guard captain hurriedly lowered his head and said with a voice full of self-blame, My lord, I underestimated the enemy and caused the failure of the mission. I even lost 4 guards. Fortunately, I steered your Wolf Fong battleship and managed to escape alive. Now that we know Ji Tianxing's background, we will definitely not fail the next time we take action. And Yu shook his head and revealed a cold smile. He said in a low voice, "No, since we have already failed once, we cannot rashly attack a second time. Ling Xian is despicable and wants to use us to help him eliminate a strong enemy. He wants to kill two birds with one stone. Not only can he get rid of Ji Tianxing, but he can also weaken our strength." The guard captain understood what Yu meant and nodded. "That's right. We are short on manpower, and we only have 80 guards. We cannot sacrifice them so easily. Every death of a guard is a great loss to us. My lord, what do you plan to do next? Are we just going to ignore the Pillar of Heaven's mountain?" And Yu shook his head again and said in a low voice, "Of course not. I want the 72 cities and the Pillar of Heaven's mountain. Especially the Pillar of Heaven's mountain. I have been flipping through the history of the Shenwu continent recently, and I discovered something very interesting. The founder of the Pillar of Heaven's mountain was the strongest person on the continent more than 1,000 years ago, and he was known as Kenshin. Furthermore, this world has been sealed by the gods, and no one has been able to ascend for tens of thousands of years. Only Kenshin managed to ascend to the god realm. But for some reason, Kenshin fell 1,000 years ago. Ji Tianxing, who now controls the Pillar of Heaven's mountain, is rumored to be Kenshin's reincarnation, which is why he is so monstrous." The guard captain frowned, and his expression became very strange. "This world has been sealed by the gods? No wonder there is a golden barrier on the surface of the planet that prevents us from entering. But why is this world sealed? Ascending to the god realm is extremely tempting to the people of this world. But to us, this is not attractive at all." And Yu revealed a meaningful smile and said in a playful tone, "That's right. To the heaven crushers, the universe is like the ocean, and we are the hunters who fight against the wind and waves. As long as one's strength surpasses the void god realm, one can successfully ascend to the god realm. But to the people of this world, no matter how strong they are, they will never be able to ascend. Think about it. If I could show them a path and give them a chance to ascend to the god realm, they would be grateful to me. Tell me, do you think they would be so grateful that they would be willing to serve me?" Hearing this, the guard captain had a sudden realization, and his eyes shone brightly. "That's right. Sir, you are too brilliant. The powerhouses of this world have not been able to ascend for tens of thousands of years, and they do not know the situation of the god realm. They have an incomparable desire to ascend. If you can make use of this, you will be able to achieve great things." And Yu laughed coldly and said in a playful tone, "This world is very special, and it is much more interesting than the other worlds that we have conquered. I have decided to completely occupy this world and plunder all of its resources, so that I can study its mysteries." He paused for a moment, and his tone became awe-inspiring as he continued. "However, this plan needs to be carried out gradually, and it cannot be rushed." Chapter 2248. 2 hours later, and Yu boarded the Wolf Feng battleship with 8 black-armored guards. Whoosh! The giant battleship flew out of the governor's manor and headed north at lightning speed. On the way to Baiming Palace, for guards were in charge of steering the ship, and Yu sat in a cold, austere room made of black iron. He held 2 ancient books in his hands and quietly flipped through them. The ancient book in his right hand was a brief history of Shenwu continent written in the demon language. As for the ancient book in his left hand, it was an extremely common book written in the demon language. Only the children of the demon race would learn this book when they first learned how to read. And Yu had wandered the universe for many years, conquering and plundering many large worlds along the way. He had accumulated a wealth of experience. Conquering and plundering a world was not enough to rely on brute force alone. He still needed to study and research this world's history and foundation. In the 3 months since he had entered the 5-elemental world, aside from conquering, killing, and conquering territories, he had spent all his time studying and researching Shenwu continent. His starting point was to learn the demon language and writing. With his experience, strength, and intelligence, he had already grasped the basics of the demon language and had a rough understanding of Shenwu continent. This was why the Heaven Punishers were so terrifying. Not only did they have an extremely strong life force and combat power, but they also had a learning ability that other races could not hope to achieve. Half a day later, the Wolf Fong battleship flew across a wasteland and arrived at the peak of the Divine Mountain. The battleship stopped above Biming Palace and floated motionlessly in the air. The captain of the guards walked into the room and respectfully reported to Yu. "Sir, we have arrived." And Yu nodded and stored the two ancient books in his spatial ring. He stood up and straightened his dark red cloak. His hand was on the hilt of his sword as he stepped out of the battleship. When he landed in the plaza outside Biming Palace with his two guards, Ling Xian and the other demon generals were already waiting for him. Ling Xian hurriedly greeted him and cupped his fists with a smile. "Sir Yu, we had a face-to-face discussion not long ago. What is it that you have to personally come here today?" Yu's face was tense, and his expression and gaze were sinister. He coldly replied, "What? You don't seem to welcome me? Or, are you feeling guilty?" Ling Xian's heart skipped a beat. He naturally understood that Yu was referring to something else. However, his expression did not change. He maintained his smile and pretended to be puzzled. "Lord Yu seems to be in a bad mood? So be it. As a sincere ally, I certainly have to give my ally comfort and care at this time. Lord Yu, please enter the main hall for a chat." Ling Xian pretended that he didn't know what was going on. He put on a smile and didn't seem to be angry at all. Instead, it made Yu feel even more disgusted and even more wary of him. In just a few encounters, Yu understood that Ling Xian's thoughts were vicious, and his actions were treacherous and despicable. He stood out among the demon race experts. No wonder the ancestral devil god gave him the authority. Yu suppressed his anger for the time being and followed Ling Xian into the meeting hall. After both of them were seated, Yu was too lazy to talk nonsense with Ling Xian. He went straight to the point. "I was full of sincerity when I cooperated with you, but you schemed against me and deliberately concealed information about Tianzhu Mountain and Ji Tianxing. Ling Xian, you don't have to put on an act with me. I have already seen through your thoughts. Ji Tianxing seems to be the reincarnation of Kenshin. He is now the strongest person below the martial god realm. Other than a god realm expert, no one can kill him." Since Yu had exposed the truth and talked about the important matter without hiding anything, Ling Xian could no longer be vague. He kept his smile and said solemnly, "Lord Yu, I didn't mean to conceal anything. Moreover, the information that I gave you was absolutely true. Ji Tianxing is indeed only a martial sage. He is also the enemy of my tribe. You sent a few guards to attack Tianzhu Mountain in a battleship. In the end, they failed miserably. I have also heard the news. As for the deaths of the few guards, I am deeply sorry and regretful. However, you can only blame yourself for underestimating your enemy and not attacking personally. It has nothing to do with my tribe. If you had attacked Tianzhu Mountain personally, Ji Tianxing would have been executed by now, and we could have immediately started working together to conquer the world." Yu sneered and said in a mocking tone, "What? Now that you've failed the mission, you're trying to push all the blame onto this seat? Since that is the case, we have nothing to talk about. I don't want to think about the 72 cities and Tianzhu Mountain for now. I think North Sea Mountain is not bad. Especially this holy mountain and North Sea Palace. I like them very much." Hearing this, Ling Xian's face changed. He frowned and said, "Lord Yu, you can't joke about this. You should know that my tribe is sincere." Seeing Yu's cold smile, Ling Xian gritted his teeth and said, "All right, I won't talk nonsense. Lord Yu, what do you want in return?" Only then did Yu put away his sneer and said in a serious tone, "I can kill Ji Tianxing myself, but you will have to pay 3 times the price. I will not give up the 5 regions in the south. The 72 cities and Tianzhu Mountain will still belong to Maine. Also, you must gather 1,000,000 demon warriors for me. I want the best of them." Ling Xian furrowed his brows and shouted without hesitation, "Impossible. Lord Yu, you are asking for too much. You are too overbearing." This is just a small lesson for you." Yu sneered and said, "I am sincere about cooperating with you, but you are playing tricks. You can't blame anyone." Ling Xian shook his head again and said firmly, "Lord Yu, you are forcing me. Please forgive me for not agreeing." and you did not back down and said, "This only shows that you are not sincere at all." The two of them were in a stalemate, neither of them willing to back down. The negotiation was in a stalemate. The atmosphere in the hall was almost frozen. However, at this moment, a voice transmission suddenly sounded in Ling Xian's mind. "Master, that bitch has shown herself." It was a low and hoarse voice. It was cold and full of murderous intent. Ling Xian knew that this was his most trusted and most hidden trump card, Song Ying. His body shook, and then the corners of his mouth curled into a playful smile. He sent a voice transmission to Song Ying and ordered, "Take her down. I want to see what she's up to." After that he stood up and saluted in Yu. With a solemn expression he said, "Master and Yu, please be patient and wait here for a moment." Chapter 2249. Ling Xian was startled at first, then his lips curled into a cold smile. Then he stood up and bid farewell, saying that he had something urgent to deal with. And Yu had been watching from the sidelines. He took in his expression and reaction. Seeing him stand up and leave, and Yu was too lazy to ask anything, he sat on the chair and pondered expressionlessly. This despicable bastard, it must be difficult for him to make a decision, so he went to ask the demon ancestor. But because he wanted to save face, he could not tell the truth, so he found this excuse. And Yu thought so. He hated Ling Xian's hypocrisy even more. Behind the conference hall, at the end of the corridor, there was a dark, small and dirty secret room, which was used to store miscellaneous items. Normally, this secret room would be forgotten by others, and no one would notice it for a few months. Only the deacons in charge of internal affairs knew about the existence of this secret room. Also, as the deacon of internal affairs, Aku had been paying attention to the news of the foreign races. Half a month ago, she had suffered 50 soul lashes. She was almost dead, her mind was extremely weak, and she had been recuperating in her room. Today, her injuries had recovered a little, and her mental state was much better. But she received news that the leader of the foreign races, Yu, had come to Baiming Palace with the black battleship. She immediately realized that Yu had come to see the great demon sage personally. There must be something important to discuss. So, she ignored her injuries and sneaked into this small and dark secret room. She hid in the corner of the secret room, and with a little trick she could eavesdrop on the conversation in the conference hall. She had also heard the argument between Ling Xian and Yu. Neither of them was willing to back down. The Pillar of Heaven's mountain had successfully blocked the attack of the battleship, and Ji Tianxing had killed a few foreign race guards. She was relieved and secretly happy. Originally, she held her breath and listened attentively, wanting to know the result. Would Yu and Ling Xian continue to work together? If the negotiation did not break down, what plan would they have next? But something that Aku did not expect happened. Just as she was listening attentively, a black shadow silently appeared in the darkness behind her. Swoosh! This blurry human figure was like a shadow of a person. There was no flesh and blood body, nor was there any magic power fluctuation or soul aura. He came without a trace and left without a trace. The black shadow did not make a sound and directly struck out a pair of pitch-black dragon claws towards Aku. Aku sensed danger and subconsciously turned around. He waved his palms and sent out two bloody palm shadows. Bang bang! With a muffled sound, the two bloody palm shadows collapsed on the spot, smashed into pieces by the pair of pitch-black dragon claws. In the next instant, the pitch-black dragon claw enveloped Aku. The secret chamber was so small that Aku couldn't dodge at all. Next door was the great meeting hall, so it was best not to cause too much of a commotion. Otherwise his identity would be exposed. Her heart was burning with anxiety as she desperately rushed to the side, trying to avoid the dragon's claws. However, her strength was simply too weak compared to that black shadow. There was no suspense in the outcome. She was immediately captured by the pitch-black dragon claw and held firmly in its palm. 5 sharp and cold claws locked her tightly, making it difficult for her to struggle or resist. Cold black gas surged out of the black claws and covered her body, making her unable to use her strength. Aku's expression changed drastically. Her dark red eyes flashed with anger and worry. However, she tried to maintain her composure and shouted at the black shadow, "Bastard, I am the internal affairs deacon. What are you doing?" Let me go. The black shadow's eyes were like two dark red flames, staring straight at her. He said with a hoarse voice, "Not only do I know that you are the internal affairs deacon, I also know that your name is Aku. Furthermore, your whereabouts in the past few months have been strange. You have been secretly eavesdropping on the great demon saint's plans. You have bad intentions." Aku immediately frowned as a bad premonition arose in her heart. She thought to herself, "Damn it. This guy is secretly spying on me? Could it be that the great demon saint is already suspicious of me? Damn it. I have been very careful these past 2 years and have never exposed myself. It is only because of the appearance of the foreign race experts that I became anxious." At this time the black shadow continued, "Oh right, my name is Songying. I am Master's shadow. You don't have to refute or explain yourself. If you have anything to say, just say it to Master." Song Ying's words confirmed Aku's guess. Her heart sank to the bottom, and her body turned cold. After a while, the stone door of the secret room opened. A tall and burly black shadow covered in dragon scales stepped into the secret room. The person who came was the great demon saint Ling Xian. His face was filled with a cold smile, and his body was filled with cold killing intent. He stood in the middle of the secret room and looked at Aku with sharp eyes. He asked in a deep voice, "Aku, tell me, why are you doing this?" How could Aku admit it? She immediately suppressed the worry in her heart and revealed an expression as if she had seen her savior. She said anxiously, "Great demon saint, you are finally here. Quickly tell Songying that this is a misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" Ling Xian grinned coldly and said in a playful tone, "Previously you were too concerned about the foreign race and wanted to influence my decision. Now that Yu has come to visit again, you are hiding here and secretly eavesdropping on the negotiations between me and Yu. Tell me, who are you? Who do you work for? You are a smart person, and you should know my methods. If you know what is good for you, be honest. Otherwise, hee." Aku hurriedly shook her head and explained anxiously, "Great demon saint, Aku is innocent. You also know that Aku used to be a blood-robed guard and trained in the Blood Sea Abyss for 3 months. I will only be loyal to the demon race and the ancestor demon god. The reason why I am so concerned about the foreign race is also for the sake of the demon race. The foreign race experts have evil intentions and are full of ambition. They are definitely not good people. Our race cooperating with them is like asking a tiger for its skin. Not only will we be attacked by them, but we will also disappoint countless people." Speaking up to here, Aku revealed a sincere expression and said in a self-mocking tone, "Great demon saint, you also know Aku's nature. I am good at guessing the intentions of my superiors and helping my master solve problems. Although Aku is the internal affairs deacon and cannot interfere with government affairs, I wholeheartedly protect the demon race and want to contribute to the demon race. Unfortunately, Aku is too concerned about this important matter and has made you doubt Aku's intentions. If Aku had known earlier, Aku would have been a useless internal affairs deacon waiting for death to earn your trust." Hearing her words, Ling Xian frowned and fell silent for a moment. He stared at Aku with a burning gaze and secretly used his divine sense to check the fluctuations of her spirit. For a moment, he almost believed Aku's words. However, he was cunning and suspicious by nature. After a moment of silence, he sneered and said, "Aku, you really have a sharp tongue, unlike the other blood-robed guards. No matter what you say, this seat will not believe you. Songying, take her to the torture department and torture her." Chapter 2250. Aku was filled with anxiety and wanted to defend himself. But Ling Xian did not want to listen to her, and waved his hand to give the order. Songying immediately took Aku out of the secret room and brought her to the torture department. At the same time, 2 groups of fierce-looking guards hurried to Aku's residence. The 3 rooms that were neither too big nor too small were soon turned upside down. In less than 15 minutes, the guards brought a large pile of boxes, books, and jade slips to Ling Xian. Ling Xian released his divine sense and scanned the messy pile of items. However, after 100 breaths, he withdrew his divine sense in disappointment. There was nothing unusual about these items. Even if the jade slips were strange, there was no conclusive evidence. Ling Xian could not help but frown and mumble to himself. Is there really nothing wrong with her? Did I really misunderstand her? Not long after, a guard rushed over from afar and quickly reporting to Lord Devil Saint, "There's news from the torture department." Ling Xian raised his eyebrows and asked, "What news?" The guard replied respectfully, "Lord Songying sent Aku to the torture department. After 3 types of torture, she was tortured so badly that she fainted. However, Lord Songying forcefully broke Aku's space ring and found 2 communication jade slips. Lord Songying said that there's something strange about the 2 communication jade slips. You'll understand once you take a look." Hearing this, Ling Xian's eyes lit up and his lips curled into a cold smile. "Haha, I guessed right. There's something wrong with that bitch." After saying this, he brought the guards and rushed to the torture department. The infamous torture department was located behind Baiming Palace, at the edge of the cliff of the sacred mountain. This was a huge black palace that looked like a skull. It sat on the edge of the cliff. The palace was built with huge black stones, and there were many blood-red flags on top of it, engraved with array patterns. The huge black door was the mouth of the skull. Those who were sent to the torture department were like being sent to the bloody mouth of a demon. The torture department was dark and gloomy. It was filled with the smell of blood and decay. Ling Xian passed through 2 dark corridors and arrived at a spacious prison cell. It was a cell with a radius of 100 meters. It was built with black boulders, and the walls were engraved with demonic carvings. There were a few blood-red gemstone lamps in the corners. As far as the eye could see, there were several rows of ferocious-looking torture instruments placed in the cell. On the innermost ground, there was a blood pool with blood-red flames boiling, emitting a nauseating smell of blood. On the eastern wall, there was a 10-meter-high altar. The base of the altar was made of skulls. There was a copper pillar as thick as a bucket on the altar, its surface covered with sharp spikes and grooves. A 7-foot-tall, slightly skinny woman was tied to a copper pillar by several dark red chains. His neck, hands, legs, and waist were all locked by black shackles. The black shackles emitted demonic chi and released a gloomy and eerie aura, immobilizing the woman. This woman was Aku. She was covered in blood and her head was lowered, unconscious. Her face was covered by her messy, blood-stained hair. Many of the spikes on the copper pillar had pierced deeply into her body. There were also 2 spikes that had pierced through her thin shoulders, and a part of them was sticking out. Dark red blood constantly gushed out, dripping down the spikes and grooves on the copper pillar onto the altar. Besides this, her black robe was in tatters, torn to shreds by the whips. Her limbs and shoulders were covered with dozens of wounds so deep that bone could be seen. Blood constantly seeped out, drenching her clothes. There was no doubt that in the last 15 minutes, she had been cruelly and viciously tortured. These were only visible physical injuries. What had truly caused her to faint were the injuries to her soul. Half a month ago, she had been subjected to 50 soul lashes in the torture department. Just now, the executioner had lashed her another 50 times, severely injuring her soul and causing her to lose consciousness. In order to not expose her identity, she had not used the power of the heavenly star chain to protect her soul, and had endured it. If not for this, she would not have been tortured to such a state. A black shadow stood below the altar, as well as a fiendish demon man as muscular as a bear. This person held a dark purple whip in his hand. His face was savage and terrifying, and he gave off a malicious aura. He was the deacon of the torture department, an executioner. Seeing Ling Xian enter the cell, the executioner and the black shadow simultaneously bowed and said respectfully, "Greetings, Lord Devil Saint." Ling Xian nodded slightly, indicating that the two could dispense with the formalities. He glanced at Aku on the altar, then turned to the black shadow and asked, "Songying, what clues have you found?" Songying hurriedly extended a pair of black claws, holding out 2 dark purple communication jade slips, and presenting them to Ling Xian. "Lord Devil Saint, these 2 communication jade slips were found in Aku's spatial ring. You will immediately understand after reading the information inside." Ling Xian hurriedly took the jade slips and used his spiritual sense to read the information inside. Instantly, Aku's clear voice sounded in his mind. "Brother Tianxing, the situation in North Underworld Mountain has been relatively peaceful in the past few months. The demons have not made any unusual movements. North Underworld Palace and Holy City have been rebuilt long ago. The demons have been recuperating, and will probably not start another war for the next 10 years. The ancestor demon god is still recuperating and cultivating in the Blood Sea Abyss. Great Devil Saint Ling Xian and Third Devil Saint Sheng Tua have recovered from their injuries, and are currently presiding over the situation. Without a doubt, this was the message that Jiku had sent to Ji Tianxing not long ago. Hearing Jiku's voice, Ling Xian was startled. Before he became a demon, he was from the vast divine kingdom, so he could understand the human language. After hearing the entire message in the jade slip, he immediately revealed a sinister smile. Ha ha ha. The human language and the tone is so gentle. It's like a completely different person from the usual Kuo. Brother Tianxing? How affectionate. The enemy that my clan hates the most is actually Ku's brother. This is really unexpected. Speaking of this, Ling Xian's face became malevolent, and his eyes flickered with dense anger. He could not help but curse. Ji Tianxing, oh Ji Tianxing. You are really cunning and treacherous. No wonder the elites of my clan repeatedly tried to assassinate you. But they were all resolved by you and allowed you to live until today. It turns out that you actually let your sister infiltrate North Underworld Mountain as a spy, right under my nose. Ling Xian picked up the second jade slip, and used his spiritual sense to read the information inside. Jiku's voice sounded in his mind again. Brother Tianxing, I have good news to tell you. Recently, a mysterious force has entered North Underworld Mountain, and is wreaking havoc in the south. After listening patiently, Ling Xian sneered again. Chapter 2251. Ling Xian put away the 2 communication jade slips. His expression was ferocious and terrifying as he looked at Jiku with a gloomy gaze. Wake her up. I have something to ask her. The executioner hurriedly nodded and responded, then raised the dark purple long whip and lashed it on Jiku's body. Immediately, a chopstick-sized wound appeared on her body, and dark red blood splattered out. Unfortunately, she was unconscious and did not react even after being whipped. She did not even let out a scream. Her divine soul was already severely injured. After being whipped by the soul-punishing whip, her injuries worsened. When the executioner saw that she had not woken up, he could not help but frown. He waved his hand and shot a dazzling purple demonic light into Jiku's body. That demonic light contained a gust of divine soul energy. After entering Jiku's body, it was about to enter her divine soul. Although her divine soul was severely injured, it still remained pure. Under the protection of the heavenly star chain, it was not contaminated by the demonic qi. Now that she was unconscious, the heavenly star chain was automatically activated when the demonic light was about to erode her divine soul. Swoosh! The heavenly star chain hidden in her mind emitted sacred starlight, and wrapped around her divine soul, protecting it firmly. The purple demonic light was instantly shattered by the starlight and expelled from her body. Seeing this, the executioner's expression changed. He was full of doubts. Ling Xian had been staring at Jiku. When he sensed the sacred energy fluctuation in her body, he immediately frowned. There is such a mighty energy fluctuation in this B***TCH's body? Does she have some powerful Dharma treasure? Ling Xian thought to himself. Jiku was Ji Tianxing's sister. Since she dared to infiltrate the Baiming Palace as a spy, she must have a trump card that could save her life. He quickly released his divine sense and carefully observed Jiku's situation. He immediately saw that there was a ball of silver light in Jiku's mind. It was as dazzling as a star. That ball of white light tightly wrapped around Jiku's mind and divine soul. It was healing the injuries to her divine soul. Ling Xian's spiritual consciousness had just touched the ball of starlight, but before he could see clearly what was going on, his spiritual consciousness bounced back. The boundless and shocking rebounding force actually shook him to the point that his expression changed drastically. He took 5 steps back with a thump-thump-thump sound, and blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. Ling Xian's divine sense also felt a burst of dizziness, only feeling that the sky and earth were spinning, almost falling to the ground. A moment later, his consciousness recovered, and his stumbling footsteps stabilized. He looked at Jiku with a face full of shock and disbelief as he shouted, That damned bitch. There was actually such a powerful magic treasure hidden in his body. It must be a saint artifact, the most powerful saint artifact, to have such power. Ling Xian was both shocked and angry. His eyes flashed with a bright light as he quickly pondered over the problem. Song Ying suggested, Master, since you're sure that Aku is a spy sent by Ji Tianqing, let's kill her. The saint artifacts and magical treasures she possesses will also belong to you. Ling Xian quickly waved his hand and sneered sinisterly. Kill her? Ha 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 ha. She's a priceless treasure now. How can I bear to kill her? Song Ying was startled, not understanding what he meant. He subconsciously asked, Master, what do you mean? Ling Xian's face was full of pride as he sneered. Killing her like this is too easy for this bitch. From today onwards, continue to torture her, and let her taste all the torture and pain in the world. However, we can't let her die yet. We have to keep her alive. She's Ji Tianqing's sister. I'm still waiting for Ji Tianqing to rescue her and die with her. Ha 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 ha. Ling Xian laughed complacently and turned to leave the prison cell. Song Ying and the executioner looked at each other, suddenly understanding Ling Xian's plan. It turned out that he wanted to use Aku as bait to lure Ji Tianqing to his death. After leaving the torture department, Ling Xian was in a good mood. When he returned to the conference hall of Baiming Palace, he couldn't help but smile. And Yu had been waiting for half an hour, and his patience was running out. He closed his eyes and rested with a gloomy face. When he heard Ling Xian's footsteps, he opened his eyes and looked at him coldly. Seeing Ling Xian's smug smile, Yu was startled. He thought to himself, what happened? Why is this guy so happy? Could it be that he asked the devil race's first ancestor for permission? At this time, Ling Xian walked to his side and sat down. He said in a relaxed tone, Master and Yu, I'm really sorry for making you wait for so long. I was dealing with a small matter just now. And Yu looked at him expressionlessly and said, Cut the crap. Do you agree to my conditions or not? Ling Xian smiled and waved his hand. Master and Yu, don't be impatient. Listen to the small matter I just dealt with first. Umph. And Yu snorted coldly. His eyes were burning with dark red flames. He was about to explode in anger. Ling Xian acted as if he didn't see it. He said slowly, I have a blood-robed guard under my command. Her name is Aku. She came to Baiming Mountain 3 years ago. She has always been loyal to me. She is very good at figuring out my intentions. She is also very clever. Half a year ago, I promoted her to Baiming Palace and made her an internal affairs deacon. The anger in Yu's eyes grew. Finally, he couldn't take it anymore and slammed his hand on the table. Bastard! I don't have time to listen to your nonsense. Ling Xian saw that Yu was angry. He quickly waved his hand and said, Master Yu, please calm down. I'm just explaining the situation to you. Since you don't want to listen, I'll get straight to the point. When I was discussing important matters with you, Aku hid in a secret room just a wall away and eavesdropped on our conversation. I suspected there was something wrong with Aku, so I sent my subordinates to spy on her. After I caught her, I found 2 communication jade slips on her body. That's how I found out her true identity. Can you guess who she really is? Ling Xian wanted to keep Yu guessing. But when he saw Yu's angry face and eyes, he didn't dare to say more. He quickly announced the answer. She is Ji Tianqing's sister. She is a spy that Ji Tianqing planted by my side. Hearing this, Yu was stunned for a moment before his anger gradually dissipated. He frowned. Hundreds of thoughts flashed through his mind. He immediately came up with a plan. Oh, Ji Tianqing is so cunning? He planted a spy by your side? If that's the case, why do we have to go to Tianzhu Mountain to find him? We can use Aku as bait to lure Ji Tianqing into our trap. Ling Xian laughed. Ah, Master Yu is really smart. You have the same idea as me. That's right. This is the turning point of the situation. And it is also our best chance. We just need to spread the news and set up a trap here. Then, we can wait for Ji Tianqing to come and die. And Yu frowned and thought for a while. He shook his head and said, Since Ji Tianqing is so cunning, he will know that this is a trap when he finds out that Aku is captured. I'm afraid he won't come. Chapter 2252. Pillar of Heaven's Mountain. It was early in the morning when the sun was rising. Many disciples in white robes were practicing their swordsmanship on the training grounds. There were also many elite disciples sitting on the rooftops and eaves of the palace, meditating and absorbing the morning light and spiritual energy. But at this moment, a guard in armor flew down from the sky and landed on the training grounds as fast as lightning. He looked anxious as he ran across the training grounds and went straight to Pillar of Heaven's palace. Seeing this scene, many of the disciples who were cultivating frowned in confusion and began to discuss in secret. Wasn't that person our sex scout? Yes. That scout rushed back and went straight to Pillar of Heaven's palace. Could it be that he has important news to report? What's going on? Did something big happen again? The situation has become more and more tense in the past 6 months. I'm afraid something big has happened again. Don't make wild guesses. If something really happened, the great immortal and the elders will announce it soon. Many disciples discussed for a while, and then went back to practicing. At the same time, in Pillar of Heaven's palace, Huanglong Daoist study. He was reading books and drinking tea leisurely, preparing to deal with official business. Outside the study, there was a sudden sound of hurried footsteps. A strong figure in armor rushed to the door of the study and bowed. Reporting to the great immortal, I have just received urgent news. I need to report it immediately. Huanglong Daoist frowned and turned to look at the scout at the door. He asked in a deep voice, "What's so urgent?" The scout did not dare to say much. He cupped his hands and reported. Reporting to the great immortal, the spy in North Underworld Mountain said that young Master Ji's sister, Miss Aku, has been exposed by the great demon sage. Now the great demon sage has imprisoned Miss Aku in North Underworld Palace and is torturing her every day. Also, North Underworld Palace has released news that Miss Aku will be publicly executed in the square 10 days later as a warning to others. Hearing this news, Huanglong Daoist spat out the tea that he had not swallowed. What? Young Master Ji's sister? Aku. Huanglong Daoist didn't have time to wipe the tea off his white beard. He stared at the messenger scout with his eyes wide open. His expression was very interesting. Where did this news come from? How could young Master Ji have a younger sister? Who is that so-called Miss Aku? The messenger was also bewildered by the Huanglong Daoist's question. After a moment of silence, the scout scratched his head and said with a firm tone, "Great Immortal, I don't know if the news is true or false. However, this news came from Baiming Palace. Furthermore, our spies have repeatedly instructed us to send back the exact same information." Huanglong Daoist frowned and thought for a moment. He couldn't help but mutter, "How could there be such a thing? This old man has never heard that young Master Ji has a younger sister. Could this be a scheme of the demon race? But isn't this scheme too clumsy?" After thinking for a while, Huanglong Daoist waved his hand and ordered, "You can leave now. This news shouldn't be spread." The scout didn't dare to ask any more questions. He quickly cupped his hands and bowed before leaving. Huanglong Daoist felt that this news was inexplicable. He didn't want to pay attention to it. He picked up the book on the table and flipped through it. However, after flipping through a few pages, he felt uneasy. He couldn't help but get up and leave the study room. He rushed to Ji Tianxing's residence. Whether the news is true or false, I have to report it to Master first. Perhaps this is another scheme of the demon race. With this thought, Huanglong Daoist came to the door of the secret room where Ji Tianxing was in seclusion. He waved his hand and shot out a few streaks of dazzling light into the stone door of the secret room. He began to knock on the door to wake Ji Tianxing up. At this time, Ji Tianxing was in the Divine Star Furnace underground, casting a spell to melt the illusory spirit star nucleus. Sensing that someone was knocking on the door of the secret room, he quickly ended the spell and left the Divine Star Furnace. After about 20 breaths, the stone door of the secret room creaked open. Ji Tianxing, dressed in a white robe, walked out of the secret room. When he saw that the person who knocked on the door was Huanglong Daoist, he asked calmly, "Huanglong, what happened? Why did you knock on the door to wake me up?" "This." Huanglong Daoist bowed. After hesitating for a moment, he said, "Master, just now a messenger came to report the news. The spy in the North Underworld Mountain sent back the news that your sister Miss Aku's identity has been exposed by the Great Demon Sage. Now, the Great Demon Sage has imprisoned Miss Aku in the North Underworld Palace. He is torturing her every day. Moreover, the North Underworld Palace has publicly announced that Miss Aku will be executed in public in 10 days. Before Huanglong Daoist could finish his words, Ji Tianqing's face changed dramatically. His calm eyes instantly became as cold as ice. What? When did this news come? Ji Tianqing's face was full of anxiety. His eyebrows were tightly knitted. He grabbed Huanglong Daoist's shoulders with both hands and asked anxiously. Huanglong Daoist was also dumbfounded. He looked at Ji Tianqing in shock and could not help but ask, Master? Could it be this news is true? He originally thought that when his master heard this absurd news, he would most likely sneer or laugh disdainfully. But he completely did not expect that his master would have such a reaction. Master, don't tell me you really have a sister? Huanglong Daoist still could not believe it and asked again. Ji Tianqing gradually calmed down. He suppressed the worry and anger in his heart and asked in a low voice, Huanglong, when did this happen? Huanglong Daoist was finally sure that his master really had a sister. It was that Miss Aku. He secretly rejoiced. Fortunately, he was cautious and reported this news to his master. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. At this time, Ji Tianqing saw that he was in a daze. He grabbed his shoulders and shook a few times and asked again. Huanglong Daoist seemed to wake up from a dream and quickly answered. Master, according to the information reported by the spies, this news came from Baiming Palace yesterday. This should have happened yesterday. Ji Tianqing frowned and murmured with a gloomy face. Cuckoo, I've been worried for a long time. With the treachery and cunning of the demon clan, they would see through your identity sooner or later. I didn't expect that this day would still come. I don't know what kind of vicious torture you will be subjected to when you are imprisoned in Baiming Palace. After saying this, he said to Huanglong Daoist with a dignified face, Huanglong, this news is temporarily confidential. Do not spread it to the public. I will leave for a few days. During this time, you must guard Tianju Mountain. Do not leave. Activate all the mountain protection arrays to prevent the demon clan from luring the tiger away from the mountain and taking the opportunity to attack Tianju Mountain. After giving the order, he got up and was about to leave. If this happened to someone else, he would not be so worried and anxious. But the person who was imprisoned and tortured was Ji Ku. She was the most sincere and selfless person to him. She was so foolish that it made his heart ache. Chapter 2253. Seeing Ji Tianqing's reaction, Huanglong Daoist knew that he wanted to go to Baiming Palace to save Ku. He was immediately filled with anxiety and stepped forward to stop Ji Tianqing. Sherzuan, you must not be impulsive. This is obviously a scheme of the demons. Baiming Palace must have deliberately released the news to lure you to rescue Miss Ku. Once you step into Baiming Palace, what awaits you will definitely be an inescapable net and a trap. Ji Tianqing stared at Huanglong Daoist with a dignified gaze and said in a low voice, Huanglong, master is not being impulsive, but I must go. Do you know how important Ku is to master? In order to help master fight against the demons, she did not hesitate to be demonized and hid in Baiming Mountain as a spy. How much danger and suffering did she endure? For master, she can disregard everything, even her own life. Now that she is in trouble and trapped, how can master just stand by and watch? Only then did Huanglong come to a realization. He understood the reason for the matter, and was immediately at a loss for words. Get out of the way, Ji Tianqing said in a dignified tone. Even if Baiming Palace is ambushed from all sides, master must go. Don't worry, master will not act rashly. I have made preparations and plans. Huanglong Daoist quickly shook his head and continued to persuade. Sherzuan, disciple understands that you are a righteous person and do not want to let Miss Ku down, so disciple will not stop you. But if you go now, you will most likely die. How can disciple just sit by and watch? If master insists on going, disciple will hand over the power to the elders and personally accompany master to Baiming Palace. Even if disciple dies in Baiming Palace, disciple will accompany master. Huanglong Daoist's tone was firm and persistent, with a bit of solemnity in the face of death. After he finished speaking, he turned to leave. "Stop!" Ji Tianqing shouted coldly, and reached out to stop him. He said in a dignified tone, "You are already so old. How can you be so reckless? Aren't you going to die?" Huanglong Daoist turned his head to look at him and said helplessly, "Shizuan, your seniority is higher than Huanglong's, and you are more wise and knowledgeable. Since you know that this is courting death, why are you so persistent?" Ji Tianqing was suddenly choked by him and was speechless. Huanglong Daoist hurriedly bowed and said in a sincere tone, "Master, this disciple doesn't mean to contradict you, but this disciple absolutely won't agree to this matter. This disciple will inform the elders of this matter, and let everyone discuss it together. Even if you insist on going, please don't be in a hurry. At least make some preparations." With that, he turned around and slipped away, ignoring Ji Tianqing's warning. Sigh. Ji Tianqing sighed and returned to the secret room to prepare. He first went through the spatial rings and sorted out some artifacts, talismans, and jade slips that might be useful. Not long after, Huanglong Daoist led the 6 elders to the door of the secret chamber. Everyone knew the truth and unanimously objected to Ji Tianqing going to Baiming Palace. Even if Ji Tianqing didn't open the door, everyone blocked the door and tried their best to persuade him. Within Luoshui Kingdom, Luoshui Mountain, it was noon and the disciples were supposed to be cultivating in their rooms. However, a joyous event had happened yesterday. Until today, Luoshui Mountain was still lively and full of joy. This was because Luoshui Mountain's senior sister, Yunyao, had finally completed her cultivation and successfully came out of seclusion. No one knew what kind of fortuitous encounter she had, but her strength soared and she actually broke through to the martial sage realm. She became the 2nd martial sage in Luoshui Mountain in 300 years. At the same time, she was also the 2nd most talented genius after Ji Tianqing. Such a shocking news shocked all the disciples, guards, and maids. Even the several thousand servants of the Luoshan Mountain knew about this matter. Even now they were still discussing it. Not only these people, but even the attendants and elders couldn't understand what had happened to Yun Yao. She had actually broken through to the martial sage realm from the tribulation stage in just a few years. On the Shenwu continent, even the most famous geniuses would need at least 100 years to accomplish such a feat. These 2 days, the Cloud Water Palace was packed with people. They were all disciples, guards, and maids of Luoshui Mountain. When everyone heard the news, they all wanted to enter the Cloud Water Palace to see the new martial sage's face and gain some good fortune. Although Yun Yao had just broken through to the martial sage realm, and was still meditating in the secret chamber to consolidate her martial foundation, she couldn't come out to meet the guests. However, everyone's enthusiasm didn't decrease as they surrounded the Cloud Water Palace, and discussed this matter in groups of 3 to 5. You didn't see it at that time. When senior sister broke through to the martial sage realm, the sky was filled with rosy clouds and auspicious auras. It was like a god descending to the mortal world. Haha, I witnessed that heavenly anomaly with my own eyes. Moreover, the sky was filled with rosy clouds and neon lights that formed the phantom of a phoenix that spread its wings and sang. I heard from the elders that according to the strange phenomenon when senior sister broke through to the martial sage realm, she is a noble and unparalleled heavenly lady. She will definitely become a god in the future. Senior sister was originally a heavenly lady. In the future, she will inherit the mantle of the divine master and control the entire kingdom of God. Just as everyone was discussing animatedly, a white-haired figure quickly strode through the gates of Cloud Water Palace. It was a stooped old granny with a kind face and a dignified aura. Everyone was curious and doubtful as they started to discuss again. Isn't that Granny Long? Granny just visited senior sister. Why is she here again? That's strange. Granny looks a little serious. She doesn't seem to be in a good mood. Granny Long is in such a hurry to enter the Cloud Water Palace. Did something happen? Ababa, don't say such inauspicious things. Senior sister just broke through to the martial sage realm. This is a joyous occasion for the entire country. Many disciples, guards, and maids were still discussing outside the palace. Inside the Cloudwater Palace, Black Eagle led the serious-looking Granny Long quickly into Yin Yao's room. She guarded the door while Granny Long walked to the corner and cast a spell to open the door to the secret room. Creak, creak, creak. After a series of muffled sounds, the door to the secret room opened. Yin Yao, dressed in a snow-white dress, was sitting cross-legged on a futon in the middle of the secret room. Her eyes were closed as she adjusted her breathing. Her expression was calm, and her aura was peaceful. However, there was an extraordinary and powerful aura surrounding her. When she heard the stone door of the secret room open, she opened her clear eyes. When she saw Granny Long walk in with a strange expression, she raised her eyebrows slightly and asked, "Granny, why have you come back? Is there anything else?" Granny Long did not beat around the bush. She nodded with a serious expression and said in a serious tone, "Yin Yao, Tianqing is in trouble." "What?" Yin Yao's expression changed instantly. She asked worriedly, "Granny, what happened?" Granny Long said in a serious tone, "The spy I arranged in the North Underworld Mountain just sent back an urgent message." Chapter 2254. The sudden news stunned Yin Yao for a moment. After Grandma Long finished speaking, she came back to her senses and quickly stood up. "Tianqing's sister, Miss Ako? Isiku. When did she come here? How did she sneak into Baiming Mountain and become a spy for the demon race?" Yin Yao naturally knew about Jiku, and she was even more aware of Jiku's feelings for Ji Tianqing. Therefore, her state of mind was immediately in a mess, and her body and mind were filled with worry and anxiety. Her eyes, which were as clear as water, were covered with deep worry. She frowned and thought, and her lips were tightly pursed, but she didn't speak for a long time. Seeing her so worried, Grandma Long advised, "Yin Yao, I know you are very worried, but I must remind you that you must dissuade Tianqing. The news that the spies heard was deliberately released by Baiming Palace. The demon race's intention is clear. They want to use Miss Aku as bait to lure Tianqing to Baiming Palace to rescue her. The person they really want to deal with is Tianqing." Yin Yao nodded and said in a low voice, "Yes. This is no longer a conspiracy of the demon race, but an open one. They clearly want to force Tianqing to save Jiku, or else they will execute Jiku in public." Grandma Long frowned and said worriedly, "You know Tianqing better than I do, so of course you know what he will choose. Even if he knows that this is a trap, he will still go to Baiming Mountain. I know that my words carry little weight, and it will be difficult for me to dissuade Tianqing. Therefore, I came to inform you as soon as I heard the news. I think you are the only one who can persuade him." Yin Yao nodded silently and said in a calm voice, "We all know Tianqing's nature very well. He has always been loyal and righteous, and he will never sit by and watch Jiku be killed. However, even if I were to send a message to him now and dissuade him from saving them, it would be useless. What's more, Tianqing and I have both let Jiku down. I'm not a jealous woman, so how can I dissuade him at this time?" Granny Long was an experienced person. She immediately sensed that something was wrong. She couldn't help but raise her eyebrows. Yin Yao, could it be that Aku isn't Tianqing's sister?" Yin Yao nodded, then shook her head and explained, "Yes and no. Aku and Tianqing were childhood sweethearts. They grew up together and had a very deep relationship. She loved Tianqing wholeheartedly and was willing to give up everything for him, even if it meant her life. But Tianqing married me and betrayed Aku's true feelings. This matter has always been hidden in my heart, and it also makes me feel deeply guilty." Granny Long came to a realization and nodded. "So that's how it is. Tianqing married you, but he didn't want to let you down. So Tianqing didn't accept Aku and treated her as a sister. Aku didn't complain and gave her all. Even if she was in the demon's nest, she would do her best to help Tianqing. Such a deep friendship shouldn't be let down." Granny Long sighed with complicated feelings. Her expression was also very helpless. Yin Yao nodded slightly and said firmly, "Since Granny also thinks so, then I can't be the bad person. Otherwise, Tianqing will regret it for the rest of his life. I'll send a message to Tianqing now. I won't dissuade him. Instead, I'll support him. Granny, I've decided to go to Tianju Mountain immediately. I want to fight side by side with Tianqing and go to Baiming Palace to rescue Jiku. What? Granny Long's expression changed drastically. She was obviously shocked. Yin Yao, are you crazy? Ako loves Tianqing deeply. It's reasonable to say that she's your love rival. You know that Tianqing doesn't care about the danger and wants to rescue your love rival. You're already very magnanimous to allow him to do so. But not only do you support Tianqing, but you also want to die with him? Baiming Palace is the demon's nest. They'll definitely set up ambushes and traps. Do you still need me to tell you how dangerous that place is? Yin Yao shook her head. She looked at Granny Long and said firmly, Granny, I'm not crazy. I'm very clear-headed. I know that Ako loves Tianqing deeply. She loves him more than anyone else in the world, even more than me. Back then, Ako had already died for Tianqing once. We can't let her sacrifice herself for Tianqing a second time. If Tianqing had awakened his memories earlier, he wouldn't have let Aku down. The person he would have married would have been Aku. But before he awakened his memories, I met and fell in love with him. We even got married and had a child together. We've all let Aku down. This time, I'll go with Tianqing to save her. Regardless of whether we succeed or not, at least we'll be at ease. Otherwise, I'll blame myself for the rest of my life and despise myself forever. Yin Yao's tone was sincere and sincere. Every word came from the bottom of her heart. Granny Long was very emotional when she heard that. She sighed helplessly and said, Sigh. Yin Yao, how can there be a woman like you in this world? Granny knows that you've always been gentle and kind, aloof from worldly affairs, virtuous and modest. But how can you be so stupid? At this point, she glanced at Yin Yao's slightly bulging belly and immediately had an idea. Yin Yao, even if you're broad-minded and want to fight side by side with Tianqing to rescue Jiku, you still haven't thought about what you've done. But have you thought about the children in your belly? They haven't been born yet. If anything happens to you and Tianqing, the two children will follow. At that time, will you still feel no regrets? You made the decision on your own. Have you considered your children? Yin Yao's body trembled, and her expression froze for a moment. She slowly lowered her head and looked at her belly. She suddenly hesitated. Indeed, she could make the decision for herself. Even if she knew that she would die, she would still want to be with Ji Tianqing. However, the two children in her belly were the most precious lives. As a mother, how could she decide the life and death of her children? Just as she was hesitating, the two children in her womb suddenly moved. Immediately after, Chunchen and Yaya's voices rang in her mind. Mother, we support your decision. Mother, no matter whether we live or die, our family will always be together. Quickly go and meet up with father. Even though the two children's voices were very young and tender, Chinchin's words were short and her tone was firm. Yaya's thoughts were more meticulous, and her emotions were richer. At that moment, Yin Yao only felt a warm current flowing through her heart. She was filled with happiness and gratitude. Her eyes were covered with a layer of mist. She couldn't help but smile and nod. Good children, my good children. Mother and father are proud of you. Seeing this, Granny Long was very anxious, but she could no longer persuade her. After Yin Yao bowed to her, she took out a transmission jade slip and sent a message to Ji Tianqing. At the same time, she quickly packed her luggage, summoned the glazed fire dragon, and rode it out of Cloud Water Palace. Chapter 2255. Tianzhu Mountain. Huanglong Daoist and several elders were still blocking the door of Ji Tianqing's secret chamber. For hours had passed, but they still hadn't left. They knelt outside the secret chamber and took turns to persuade Ji Tianqing, hoping that he would give up the idea of going to Baiming Mountain. Ji Tianqing tried to chase Huanglong and the other elders away several times, but they refused to leave no matter what. Huanglong Daoist's attitude was also very firm. If Ji Tianqing insisted on going to Baiming Mountain, he had to go with him. The two sides were in a stalemate and couldn't resolve it for the time being. However, at this moment, a stream of light suddenly flew from the sky. Swoosh! The dense stream of light flew into the secret chamber and landed in front of Ji Tianqing. After the light faded away, a communication jade slip appeared. Ji Tianxing was meditating and thinking about the rescue plan. He was startled when he suddenly saw the stream of light flying over. He reached out to pick up the communication jade slip and sent his divine sense into it. Immediately, Yin Yao's voice sounded in his mind. My husband, I suddenly heard the news today that Aku's identity was exposed. I'm also very worried. My husband, please calm down and wait for a day. I will immediately come to Tianzhu Mountain to meet you and talk in detail face to face. From Yin Yao's tone, it was clear that she was worried and anxious. She had always been calm and wise. Only when she encountered an extremely important matter would she react like this. Ji Tianxing immediately frowned and slowly put away the communication jade slip. He was full of doubts. What's going on? Isn't Yao Yao in seclusion in Luotian Mountain? How did she know about this? How did the news spread to Luotian Mountain? I just gave her the Wind-Fire Divine bead not long ago. Logically speaking, she should be in seclusion to refine the divine bead. Could it be that she hurriedly came out of seclusion after hearing the news and came to discuss with me face to face? Thinking of this, Ji Tianxing's expression became more dignified, and he became more worried. Initially, he wanted to keep it a secret and secretly head to Baiming Palace alone to rescue Ji Ke. But now Yin Yao also knew about it and was on her way. No matter how worried he was about Ji Ke's safety, he could only give up on the idea for the time being and patiently wait for Yin Yao's arrival. After a moment of consideration, he stood up and walked out of the secret room. When the Huanglong Taoist and several elders outside the door saw him come out, they immediately surrounded him and tried to persuade him. Ji Tianxing waved his hand and said with a solemn expression, "Everyone, there's no need to persuade me anymore. Go back and rest. My wife is about to arrive at the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. I will not leave. I will wait for her here." Knowing that he wouldn't be leaving for the time being, Huanglong and the other elders heaved a sigh of relief. Only then did they bow and bid farewell. However, Huanglong paid extra attention to this. He asked the two elders to stay behind and guard the door of the secret room. He couldn't help but worry. What if Shizuan was just looking for an excuse to quietly slip away? A day and a night had passed. The two elders had been guarding the door of the secret room and hadn't left at all. Fortunately, Ji Tianxing had been in the secret room the whole time. No one knew what he was fiddling with, but he didn't show his face again. Until evening, when the sun set in the west. A fiery red stream of light sped over from the south and landed on the training hall. After the fiery light dissipated, a 1,000-foot-long, golden-red glazed fire dragon appeared. A beautiful woman in a white dress flew down from the dragon's back. Seeing this, the messenger guards hurriedly rushed into the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains Palace to report the news. A moment later, the Huanglong Taoist rushed to the training hall and personally welcomed the woman in the white dress. The woman in the white dress was Yin Yao. She put away the glazed fire dragon and stood under the sword steel to wait. The Huanglong Taoist quickly walked in front of her and bowed. Disciple Huanglong greets Shermu. Yin Yao hurriedly rushed to the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains, thinking about Ji Ke's matter. Unexpectedly, the Huanglong Taoist's words made her frown, and her expression was slightly strange. She was only a young woman in her 20s, but the Huanglong Taoist was a white-haired senior who had lived for thousands of years. The title of Shermu sounded awkward when it came out of the Huanglong Taoist's mouth. However, Yin Yao didn't care about this. She nodded slightly to the Huanglong Taoist and ordered, "Huanglong, rise. Quickly bring me to see Tianxing." The Huanglong Taoist quickly led the way for her. "Shermu, please follow me." Then, he led Yin Yao through the training hall and rushed to the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains Palace. They entered Ji Tianxing's room. The room was clean and elegant, but there was no one in sight. "Shermu, please wait here for a moment. I will go and invite Master over." With that, Huanglong quickly rushed to Ji Tianxing's secret room. Yin Yao stood in the middle of the room and looked around calmly. Not long after, Ji Tianxing rushed over after hearing the news. "Yao Yao, why are you here?" As soon as she entered the room, Ji Tianxing welcomed her with a worried face. He held Yin Yao's hands and looked at her from head to toe. "Aren't you cultivating in seclusion at the Luotian Mountain? How can you give up halfway? Moreover, you are pregnant now. How can you rush to the pillar of heaven's mountains alone? It's too dangerous. As he spoke, he pulled Yunyao to sit at the table and poured her a cup of tea. Seeing how worried he was, Yunyao smiled and shook her head. She comforted him. Husband, you don't have to worry. I have successfully refined the wind-fire divine pearl. Just the day before yesterday, I successfully broke through to the martial sage realm and ended my seclusion. I didn't expect Granny Long to tell me the news the day after I came out of seclusion. That's why I rushed over. Ji Tianxing heaved a sigh of relief and nodded in relief. You have finally broken through to the martial sage realm. That's great. However, what you should do now is to rest and stabilize your cultivation. It's not suitable for you to travel long distances. Yunyao held his hands and looked at him with clear eyes. She said solemnly, Husband, it would be fine if I didn't know about this. However, now that I know about this, how can I cultivate in peace? How can I sit by and do nothing? I know that Jiku's feelings for you are higher than the sky and deeper than the sea. For you, she was willing to go to Baiming Palace and become a spy. She was even willing to sacrifice everything. We owe her. No matter what, we have to save her. Husband, I want to go with you. As husband and wife, we will definitely be able to save Jiku successfully. Ji Tianxing looked at her with a complicated expression. His heart was filled with mixed feelings. He felt guilty, relieved and touched. Yao Yao, I originally wanted to go to Baiming Palace to save her without telling you and the child. I owe her too much. If I don't save her, I'm not fit to be a human. However, if I do that, I'll be letting you and the child down. I didn't expect you to understand my feelings and support my decision. Thank you. Ji Tianxing suppressed his emotions and said firmly, Yao Yao, you are pregnant and Baiming Palace is too dangerous. You can't go. I have more confidence if I go alone. I will leave tonight. You stay at Pillar of Heaven's Mountains and wait patiently for my news. Chapter 2256. From the beginning to the end, Ji Tianxing had never thought of bringing Yunyao to Baiming Mountain. In fact, he had planned to hide it from Yunyao from the beginning. After all, he owed Jiku, but Yunyao and the two children did not. He would never let Yunyao and the children fall into a life and death situation. Even if he died in battle at Baiming Mountain, he was not willing to let Yunyao and the children get hurt. However, after hearing his words, Yunyao shook her head repeatedly and said firmly, Husband, I will never allow you to go alone. Since we are husband and wife, we should be in the same boat through thick and thin. Chen Chen and Yaya have also agreed with my decision. Our family will be together forever. Ji Tianxing fell silent and looked at Yunyao deeply. He understood Yunyao's nature and knew that she was soft on the outside but tough on the inside. Since she had made a decision, she would not change it easily. No matter how he tried to persuade her, it was useless. Since that was the case, he simply did not say anything more. Anyway, he had already expected this outcome and had made the corresponding preparations. He looked at Yunyao gently and slowly stretched out his arms to pull her into his arms and hug her tightly. Yao Yao, being able to marry you is the greatest happiness in my life. You know me, understand me, respect me, and love me. I have no regrets in this life. He seemed to be muttering to himself in a low voice and stroked Yunyao's long hair reluctantly. Yunyao leaned on his shoulder and revealed a blissful smile on her beautiful face. After a long time, the two of them separated and the warm atmosphere gradually faded. Ji Tianxing pulled Yunyao into the secret room. Yao Yao, you must be tired after rushing here. Let's meditate here for the night. We have to conserve our energy and set off early tomorrow morning. Yunyao did not doubt his words and nodded in agreement. Then, she sat cross-legged on the futon and closed her eyes to cultivate and consolidate her martial arts foundation. When she entered the state of cultivation, Ji Tianxing quietly left the secret room. After closing the door of the secret chamber, he looked at the stone door with a complicated expression and murmured to himself, Yao Yao, forgive my selfishness. I can't take you with me on this adventure. What I owe, even if I have to pay it back with my life, I will have no regrets. But you and our child must live well. Nothing must happen to you. Then he raised both of his palms and formed a hand seal. His spiritual energy poured into the door of the secret room. Suddenly, the holy formation that shrouded the secret room was activated. 2 lines of golden light appeared. A golden light barrier with a radius of 1,000 feet sealed off the entire secret chamber. Over the past day and night, he knew that Yunyao would come, so he set up this formation in the secret room. This was a top-notch saint formation with unparalleled defensive power. Other than him, there was no other martial saint who could break it. After activating the array, Ji Tianxing stood quietly outside the door for a while. Then he turned and left. He still did not change his mind and wanted to go to Baiming Palace alone. However, before he left the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, he left an order in Huanglong Daoist's study. Huanglong, you must protect the Pillar of Heaven's mountains when I am not here. Nothing must go wrong. Otherwise I will punish you. Also my wife, Yunyao, is cultivating in the secret chamber. You must send someone to guard outside the chamber. You must not let her leave. If I don't come back, you must obey my wife's orders and assist her wholeheartedly in managing the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. You must not disobey. There were only 3 sentences in the order, but they were strictly worded and left no room for doubt. In the dead of night, everything was silent. Ji Tianxing used the secret technique of invisibility and left the Pillar of Heaven's mountains silently. He flew to the north as fast as lightning. He had already made plans and preparations for his trip to Baiming Palace. No matter what kind of danger he faced, he was confident that he could resolve it. At the very least, he had to successfully rescue Ji Ku and come back alive. The night passed very quickly. The next morning, the sun had just risen. Yunyao, who was in the secret chamber, slowly ended her cultivation. After a night, her martial arts foundation had been consolidated, and she had returned to her peak condition. However, when she opened her eyes, she realized that she was the only one in the secret chamber. Ji Tianxing was not in the secret chamber. She instinctively frowned and had a bad premonition. However, she still comforted herself in her heart. Perhaps Tianxing was busy with other things. She got up and walked to the door. She waved her hand and shot out a ray of golden light to open the door of the secret chamber. However, the ray of golden light entered the stone door. It was like a clay ox entering the sea. There was no reaction. What's going on? She murmured in confusion. She pressed her palms on the stone door and released a surge of dermic powers to try to open the door again. However, the stone door lit up with a layer of golden light and released a majestic force that bounced her away. She was forced to take a few steps back before she could steady herself. She immediately understood the reason. Tianxing, he actually set up a sealing array to trap me in the secret chamber and left alone? Of course, she could tell that the sacred array that sealed the secret chamber was set up by Ji Tianxing. Moreover, the power of this sacred array was vast and mighty, but it would not hurt her. Other than Ji Tianxing, who else could have such an ability? Yunyao frowned and looked at the stone door. Her face was filled with anxiety and worry. She muttered to herself, Tianxing, oh Tianxing, you know that I won't hold a grudge against you, and I won't stop you from rescuing Ji Ku. Why are you still unwilling to take me with you? From the day we got married, I swore to live and die with you. Why are you abandoning me and leaving alone? Actually, she also knew that Ji Tianxing did this to protect her and their 2 children. In the face of danger, he would rather face it alone than drag his wife and children down with him. Yunyao was touched, but she became even more worried and anxious. At this moment, Chenchen's voice sounded in her mind. She consoled her. Mother, father is protecting us. He doesn't want us to take the risk. Yaya also said, Mother, father is going to take the risk alone, but he's trapping us here. Quickly think of a way to break the array set up by father. We'll go help him. Yunyao nodded and said calmly, All right, you 2 have to help mother too. Let's work together to break the array set up by your father. With that, she formed a seal with both hands. She quickly waved her hands and formed a profound seal. She swiped her index and middle fingers in front of her eyes. Immediately, her eyes turned icy blue and lit up with a deep brilliance. When she looked at the secret chamber's stone door and walls again, she saw that the scene had changed. Thousands of golden lines and veins appeared. She observed with rapt attention. Her brain also worked quickly calculating and deducing the lines and veins of the array. At the same time, in the Huanglong Taoist study, he had just entered the study and was about to deal with official business when he found a jade slip on the desk. He picked up the jade slip and used his divine sense to read the information inside. Immediately, Ji Tianxing's dignified voice sounded in his mind. After a few breaths, he heard Ji Tianxing's order, and his expression changed drastically. Chapter 2257. Huanglong Taoist originally thought that his master's wife, Yin Yao, would definitely be able to dissuade his master, but he did not expect that his master would still go to Baiming Palace alone. Even his wife, Yin Yao, was trapped in the secret chamber. He finally understood that his master had made up his mind, and it was useless no matter who tried to persuade him. Moreover, the last sentence of his master's order seemed to be his last words. This made his heart extremely heavy, and a thick layer of haze covered it. But things had already come to this, and he was powerless to change anything. The only thing he could do was to follow his master's order and guard the door of the secret chamber, and never let his master's wife leave. At the same time, he would do his best to protect Tianju Mountain. He sat cross-legged outside the secret chamber, closed his eyes and meditated, trying to calm his mind. But not long after, he sensed a strong energy fluctuation in the secret chamber. He opened his eyes and saw that the walls of the secret chamber were shining with a golden brilliance. It was obvious that the defensive array had been activated. Seeing this scene, Huanglong Taoist immediately understood. With Master's intelligence, she must have discovered that Master sneaked away and set up a sealing array in the secret chamber. She is most likely trying to break the array. Unfortunately, who can break the sacred array set up by Master himself? Huanglong Taoist muttered to himself, pretending that nothing had happened, and continued to close his eyes and rest outside the door. At the same time, in the secret chamber, Yin Yao stood in the middle of the secret chamber, waving her palms with a solemn expression, and constantly forming array seals. She released a colorful brilliance and injected it into the surrounding walls, trying to break the array. For a full 4 hours, she did not stop casting the spell for a single moment, never once stopping. She formed tens of thousands of array seals and made hundreds of attempts. However, the result was no exception. The array seals she released were all swallowed by the array, and it did not cause much of a reaction. Fortunately, after so many attempts, the array had undergone many changes, and she had a deeper understanding of arrays. She temporarily stopped casting and stared at the array, frowning as she pondered. Although the structure and veins of this array are somewhat similar to the 3 origin fire array and the 9 stars return to dust array. However, I have tried over 100 times but to no avail. I am unable to unlock the meridians. Could it be that I'm going in the wrong direction? The saint formation set up by Tianxing has nothing to do with those 2 formations? Her brain was working at high speed, deducing and calculating the structure of the array. At this moment, Yaya comforted her considerately. "Mother, don't worry. Father is a 1 in a million genius, and is now the strongest person below the martial god." The saint array that he had personally set up was, of course, incomparably marvelous and unfathomable. However, Father used this formation to trap you, but he didn't want you to suffer any harm. You can think about what kind of formation it is based on this point. Yin Yao's eyes lit up when she heard Yaya's reminder. She felt enlightened all of a sudden. Yeah, Yaya was still the smartest. Mother only wanted to observe the structure of the array, and guess what kind of array it was, but she forgot about this point. Your father is very meticulous. Since he doesn't want to hurt us, this array formation doesn't have any offensive capabilities. This kind of formation that was only used for sealing and posed no threat was extremely rare. I have to think about it carefully. Perhaps I can find the answer. Yin Yao revealed a gratified smile. She began to search through her memories for saint-level formations that met this condition. Soon Chunchen, who had been silent all this time, seemed to have thought of something. He transmitted his voice to Yin Yao through his soul. "Mother, when you were trying to break the array just now, Chunchen was observing the array's reaction and changes." Chunchen thought for a long time and roughly guessed that the array that Father had set up could be the 9 heaven star array, or the ultimate crimson golden star array. When Father taught me the 9 heavens cloud dragon technique, and taught Yaya the infinite stars technique, these 2 types of saint formations were included. Yin Yao's eyes lit up when she heard this. 9 heavens star array? Ultimate crimson golden star array? I don't seem to have heard of these 2 formations in my memories. Chunchen, according to your judgment, what kind of formation is this? Chunchen considered for a moment, then said with certainty, according to my judgment, it should be the ultimate crimson golden star array. If it's the 9 heaven star array, it will have 9 main meridians that gather the power of more than 300 stars. The brilliance of the stars is silvery white, while this great formation is dark gold. Therefore, the most likely possibility is the ultimate crimson golden star array. Yin Yao could not help but nod when she heard his explanation. She asked, Chunchen, then do you know how to break the array? Chunchen was silent for a moment, then explained, Mother, Chunchen has been focusing on cultivating the 9 heavens cloud dragon technique. Even if I were to study the array, it would be useless. Therefore, I did not waste my time on it. The light in Yin Yao's eyes dimmed. She was a little disappointed. However, Chunchen continued, Mother, don't be anxious. Chunchen will study the array now and try to master the ultimate crimson golden star array in the shortest time possible. Yin Yao's heart reignited with a glimmer of hope. She asked tentatively, Chunchen, how long will you need? Is there enough time? Chunchen did not give a definite answer. He only said, Mother, don't worry. Chunchen will do his best. After that, he went silent. Clearly, he had gone to study the array. Yin Yao could only wait patiently. She took the opportunity to meditate and recover her magic power. Before she knew it, 24 hours had passed. Yin Yao meditated for an entire day. Her magic power had recovered to its peak. At this moment, Chunchen's voice suddenly sounded in her mind. His tone was filled with joy and pride. Mother, Chunchen has finished studying. I've basically mastered the ultimate crimson golden star array. Yin Yao was stunned when she heard this news. She said in disbelief, What? So fast? It's only been a day. She could not believe that her son was so monstrous. He had only used 24 hours to master a top-notch holy formation. If Chunchen's words were true, the world would be shocked when this news spread throughout the continent. Countless people would be so shocked that their eyeballs would pop out. Chunchen was neither proud, nor did he want to waste time. He said calmly, Mother, there's no time to lose. Do as I say now. We'll try our best. Yin Yao calmed herself down and nodded hurriedly. All right. Mother believes in you. Chunchen said solemnly. Step on the center of the palace with your left foot. Raise your head and look at the sky. Hold the 3-foot sword in your right hand. Point it all at Mount Zhen. Although his voice was still very young, his tone was solemn. He chanted the incantation methodically. It was rather imposing. Yin Yao did not hesitate. She followed his instructions. She stepped on the center of the palace in 9 leaps. She formed the incantation with both hands and began trying to break the array. She shot out several streaks of magic power light one after another, hitting specific locations. Her footwork also changed accordingly. The array that enveloped the secret room immediately reacted. Thousands of meridians appeared, shining with golden light. Chapter 2258. The facts proved that Chunchen's deduction was correct. The sacred formation that enveloped the secret chamber was the ultimate crimson golden star formation. However, Ji Tianxing had added some changes to it. However, this did not affect the main structure of the formation. Under Chunchen's guidance, Yin Yao stepped on the stars and clenched her fingers together. She continuously cast spells, producing dazzling radiance. She did not stop for a full 6 hours. In total, she formed more than 10,000 seals. It was impossible for an ordinary martial saint to memorize such a complicated method to break the formation in one go, much less execute it smoothly. However, Chunchen did it. She memorized the steps in sequence to break the formation without making any mistakes. Yin Yao did it too. She followed Chunchen's guidance and formed the seals without missing a step. Both mother and son were peerless geniuses, peerless geniuses that only appeared once in 1,000 years. Finally, 6 hours passed. Yin Yao finished casting and successfully broke the ultimate crimson golden star formation. At that moment, the golden light barrier that enveloped the secret chamber released a dazzling light. Then, the golden light quickly retracted into the wall. The entire formation also closed. Yin Yao watched the formation close with her own eyes. She revealed a gratified expression and said proudly in her heart, "Chun-Chun, how can you be so monstrous? Even if there are countless geniuses in the world, compared to you, they are like fireflies to the moon. They can't be compared." Yaya was also very excited. She said excitedly, "Brother is simply too powerful. I'm afraid that other than father and mother, no one can compare to brother's talent." Chun-Chun received such praise, but she was neither arrogant nor impatient. She said calmly, "Mother, you've been casting spells continuously for a few hours. Your magic power must be depleted. You should recover your magic power first. Then we'll go look for father." Yin Yao thought for a moment and shook her head. "No, your father has already left for a day and a half. I have to hurry over at my fastest speed to find him. I still need 2 days on the way. It's enough for me to recover my magic power." Then, she waved her hands and sent out 2 rays of blue light into the secret chamber's stone door. With a muffled creak 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 sound, the stone door slowly opened. Yin Yao hurriedly stepped out of the secret chamber. However, as soon as she reached the door of the secret room, she was stopped by a white-haired old man who wore an apricot-yellow Taoist robe and held a horsetail whisk. This person was the Huanglong Taoist who was guarding outside the door. For the past 1.5 days, he had been standing guard outside the door, not taking a single step out. In the past few hours, not only did he feel the energy fluctuations in the secret room, but he also saw the array light up with golden light. He knew that Yin Yao had never given up on cracking the array. However, he knew that it was impossible for Yin Yao to break the formation set up by Ji Tianxing. At this moment, he was dumbfounded when he saw Yin Yao open the door of the secret chamber and appear at the door. "Mistress, you actually broke Master's array? How is this possible?" Huanglong Taoist couldn't believe his eyes. He stared at Yin Yao dumbfounded. Yin Yao frowned and looked at him, asking, "Huanglong, why are you here? Have you been guarding outside the secret chamber all this time?" Huanglong Taoist came back to his senses and didn't dare to hide anything. He hurriedly explained, "Mistress, that's right. This disciple was ordered by Master to guard here." Yin Yao nodded to show that she understood. She said in a dignified tone, "Huanglong, get out of the way. I'm going to find Tianxing. I can't let him take the risk alone." Huanglong Taoist refused to back down. He persuaded her earnestly, "Mistress, with your talent and wisdom, of course you can understand that Master did this with good intentions. He would rather take the risk himself and die than be a burden to you and your child. Now that you've cracked the array, if you really go to Baiming Mountain, wouldn't his painstaking efforts be in vain?" Before Master left, he left a decree for this disciple. "Please forgive me, mistress. This disciple will never allow you to leave." Yin Yao saw that his attitude was firm and that he would not back down. She said in a low voice, "Huanglong, if you can understand Tianxing's feelings, you can also understand my worries. Don't worry, I won't do anything I'm not confident in. And I definitely won't watch as Tianxing fights alone. I'll send a message to God Lord Luoshui right now and ask her to help me save Tianxing." Huanglong Taoist was taken aback by these words. Soon after, he revealed a look of pleasant surprise and nodded repeatedly. "Right. That's right. Mistress, you're the most considerate. Only God Lord Luoshui can break into Baiming Palace and save Master and Miss Aku. You're the eldest senior sister of Luoshui Mountain, the future overlord of Luoshui Divine Kingdom. Only you can ask martial god Luoshui for help." In truth, Huanglong Taoist had long since thought that only a martial god expert could guarantee the safety of Ji Tianxing and Aku. However, his words carried little weight, and he had no friendship with martial god Luoshui, much less contact him. He could only dispel this thought. Since Yin Yao had spoken, he naturally agreed wholeheartedly. Yin Yao didn't waste any time. She hurriedly took out a transmission jade slip and sent a message to martial god Luoshui. Then, she said to Huanglong Daoist, "I've already sent a message to ask God Lord Luo Shui for help. You can rest assured now, right?" Huanglong Daoist nodded and bowed gratefully. "Many thanks, mistress. If God Lord Luo Shui appears and successfully saves Master and Miss Aku, Pillar of Heaven's Mountain will forever remember this kindness." With that, he no longer stopped Yun Yao and took the initiative to retreat to the side. Yun Yao gave him a few words of advice before quickly leaving Pillar of Heaven's palace. Arriving at the training ground, she summoned the glass fire dragon and rushed to the north as fast as lightning. Huanglong Daoist stood in place and watched the glass fire dragon disappear into the horizon. He prayed in his heart, "I hope Master, Mistress, and Miss Aku can return safely." Dark North Mountain near the Holy City. It was late at night. The sky was as dark as ink, and cold winds howled in the night sky. The newly constructed Holy City was as majestic and dignified as ever. However, there were only around 1 million demons in the Holy City. It was no longer as prosperous as before. In the past, the city would have been filled with lights, but now, it was dark and desolate. Whoosh! An invisible black silhouette tore through the night sky and flew above the Holy City, stopping in the midst of a demonic cloud. This black silhouette was none other than the invisible Ji Tianxing. After 2 days of traveling at full speed, he had finally arrived at the demon race's holy city from Pillar of Heaven's Mountain. 1,000 li to the north, across a brown wasteland, he would reach the Divine Mountain. The summit of the Divine Mountain was his goal, Dark North Palace. However, he had long since made preparations and plans. He would not rashly charge into Dark North Palace. He hid in the night sky and observed the holy city from above, quietly waiting for an hour. Only when a group of black-armored demon guards emerged from the city lord's mansion did he begin to move. Whoosh! Chapter 2259. Jiku had once mentioned something to Ji Tianxing. After Baiming Palace was rebuilt, it was still lacking many things. There were cultivation resources, as well as various miscellaneous items. In the next few months, the things that were lacking would have to be gradually replenished. Thus, every 2 or 3 days, Baiming Palace would send a group of guards to the holy city. The city lord's mansion would prepare the things that Baiming Palace lacked in advance, and the guards would bring them back. As the steward of internal affairs, Jiku was well aware of this matter. In the past, Ji Tianxing had not taken this matter to heart. Only after Jiku's incident, and when he was considering a plan of action, did he remember this matter. The group of demon race guards were all members of Baiming Palace. They possessed identity tokens and could enter Baiming Palace at will. Thus, they became Ji Tianxing's targets. This group of guards had a total of 18 people. They all wore cold black metal armor and heavy helmets, revealing only their purple or dark red eyes. After they left the city lord's mansion, they silently flew into the night sky and leisurely rushed back to Baiming Palace. Ji Tianxing silently followed behind them, maintaining a distance of 100 meters so that he was not discovered. After 100 breaths of time, the demon race guards were flying above a mountain range. The night was pitch black, and the dense devil chi and black clouds obscured them from view. At this moment, Ji Tianxing finally made his move. Using the Armillary Heaven secret art, he controlled the power of the world and transformed it into a giant invisible hand that instantly captured a guard. This guard walked at the very back of the group, looking completely unconcerned. It was obvious that he had carried out this mission many times and had always been safe, so he was not vigilant. But he did not expect that death would descend upon him without any warning. The giant invisible hand firmly restrained him, making him unable to move or even make a sound. Then, an invisible spike formed from spiritual energy viciously pierced his spiritual energy. He was killed on the spot without making a single sound. Even at the moment of his death, he did not know what had happened, nor did he know who the murderer was. After Ji Tianxing killed the black-armored guard, his divine soul left his body and entered this person's body. As for his real body, he had placed it in the sword world, safe and sound. Next, Ji Tianxing would be in charge of controlling the body of the demon clan guard. On the surface, this person did not seem to have changed at all. But in reality, his soul had already been replaced by Ji Tianxing. From the moment Ji Tianxing made his move to the moment he completed the possession, it was only a matter of a blink of an eye. The dozen or so guards at the front of the group did not notice anything amiss. They maintained a steady speed and flew towards Baiming Palace. Ji Tianxing adapted to his new body and sped up to catch up. Nothing was said along the way. Half an hour later, the 18 guards returned to Baiming Palace. They first went to the Internal Affairs Hall and took out various resources and miscellaneous items from their spatial rings and handed them to the Internal Affairs Manager. After completing the mission, everyone left the Internal Affairs Palace and returned to their respective residences. Ji Tianxing was thinking about where to find Ji Ke's whereabouts. At this time, a black armored guard came up and patted his shoulder familiarly. He smiled lightly and said, "A man, come to my place for a drink. Tonight at the City Lord's mansion, Captain, you gave me a bottle of good wine. Drinking it can strengthen my qi and blood and increase my cultivation for several years." Only now did Ji Tianxing know that this body was called a man. Okay. He nodded without hesitation and replied. He spoke in the demon language. In order not to expose his identity, his words were very short. The black armored guard did not suspect anything. He brought him into Baiming Palace and to a room in the backyard. This room only had 2 rooms, the bedroom inside and the living room outside. The area was not big. There was also a secret room underground used for meditation and cultivation. The black armored guard pulled Ji Tianxing to a seat in the living room. He took out a bottle of wine and a few dishes from his spatial ring and began to eat and drink with Ji Tianxing. The wine was the demon race's common strong blood wine. The dishes were made from demon beast meat. It was rough and fishy, making it hard to swallow. But Ji Tianxing did not want to reveal anything. He could only drink and eat as if nothing had happened. He rarely took the initiative to speak. The black armored guard saw that he was silent and comforted him straightforwardly. "A man, why aren't you saying anything? Are you still angry about that matter? Get over it. Although we are the guards of Baiming Palace, we are still lowly servants. The manager can scold or hit us as he wishes. As long as you listen to brother, you will have a share of my benefits in the future." Ji Tianxing then knew that this person was called Pu Cheng. He had been in Baiming Palace for several years. As for the matter between A Man and Pu Cheng, he had no interest in knowing. He was a man of few words but kept urging Pu Cheng to drink. In 15 minutes, Pu Cheng had drunk more than half of the flask of strong blood wine. He was so drunk he could not think clearly. But he was like many people. The more drunk he was, the more he spoke. He did not even think before he spoke. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ji Tianxing kept probing Pu Cheng, trying to find out more information. "I heard that our internal affairs deacon is a human female impersonating. Isn't that so?" Pu Cheng hugged the flask of wine and said with drunken eyes, "She hid it really well. But she still could not escape the great Mo Saint's eyes." Ji Tianxing continued to ask, "In a few days she will be executed. Who will be in charge of watching over her?" Pu Cheng hugged the flask of wine and drank a few mouthfuls of the dark red blood wine. He said unclearly, "In any case, there are those bastards from the torture department. It has nothing to do with us. Let me tell you, A Man, this is a fight between immortals. We are just small fries, we should not interfere." Torture department. Ji Tianxing furrowed his brows and had a plan in mind. Pu Cheng lay drunk on the table and said with a smile with his eyes closed, "What is it? Are you thinking of being whipped by the executioner last month? Be careful in the future. That torture department is hell. If you go in, even if you don't die, you will lose half your life." Ji Tianxing no longer paid any attention to him. He stretched out his hand and shot out a formless soul power that struck his divine soul. Pu Cheng immediately fell into a deep sleep and quieted down. Ji Tianxing quietly left and flew out of Baiming Palace. He looked around for the location of the torture department. The torture department was at the cliff behind Baiming Palace. It was shaped like a skull and was very eerie and eye-catching. After Ji Tianxing found the torture department, he hid in the shadows and observed for a long time. However, there were large numbers of guards inside and outside the torture department. There were also many saint-level formations. The defense was very tight. He even faintly felt that there were a few faint powerful consciousness shrouding the torture department. He immediately guessed that Jiku was imprisoned in the torture department. The martial saints of the Mo race were watching the movements of the torture department to prevent him from breaking out of the prison. If he rashly appeared or acted, he would definitely be surrounded and attacked. The present torture department looked calm on the surface, but in reality, it had already set up an inescapable net. Chapter 2260. The night was as dark as ink. Biming Palace was shrouded in demonic energy and black clouds. The atmosphere was heavy and oppressive. Ji Tianqing quietly returned to Park Cheng's residence. He sat at the table with an indifferent expression, staring deeply at the table. He was thinking about how to rescue Jiku. There had never been a moment when he was as anxious and worried as he was now. He knew that Jiku was imprisoned in the torture department and was less than 10,000 zhang away from him, but he could not immediately rescue her. Who could understand this kind of torment? He did not know what kind of suffering and torture Jiku was enduring. There was only one thing he was sure of. With the protection of the heavenly star chain, Jiku's soul would not be destroyed. However, she could only preserve her life. That was all. Ji Tianqing's mind spun quickly, and one idea after another appeared. However, he thought of more than a dozen plans, but none of them could withstand scrutiny. He could only give them all up. Unknowingly, for hours passed. It was daybreak. Park Chung was lying motionlessly on the table, sleeping soundly. At this moment, the door was kicked open. A middle-aged devilish being in a suit of black armor strode into the room with an enraged expression. This person was also a guard of Biming Palace, but he was the captain of the guards. He glanced at the sleeping Park Chung, and then his cold gaze landed on Ji Tianqing. He angrily shouted, "You two short-lived animals, have you forgotten today's mission? The entire team is waiting for you. What are you two doing hiding in the room?" Ji Tianqing glanced at him indifferently, but did not speak. The captain saw the wine jug on the table, and suddenly realized. He grinned. Good. The two little bastards were actually hiding in the room to drink wine. And they were even drunk to the point of being dead drunk? So lawless. Aren't you afraid that this seat will send you to the torture department and skin you alive? Hearing this, Ji Tianqing's eyes flashed. He immediately had an idea. He slowly stood up and stared coldly at the captain, a cold smile on his lips. Idiot, I've tolerated you for a long time. The guard captain was stunned on the spot. He stared at him and asked in disbelief, "What did you say?" The Nuo man in front of him had always been dull and cowardly. He simply couldn't believe that a man dared to scold him to his face. Little bastard, I see that you've gone against the heavens. The guard captain flew into a rage, and his eyes turned scarlet. Without hesitation, he raised his fists and smashed them toward Ji Tianqing's head. In a fit of rage, he punched without holding back. He wished he could kill Ji Tianqing on the spot. Ji Tianqing naturally wouldn't avoid it. He smiled contemptuously and raised his hand to slap him. Pa! Before the guard captain could even touch Ji Tianqing, he was slapped in the face, and a crisp sound rang out. His vision went dark, and he was sent flying backward with his head spinning. Thud. The door was smashed into pieces, and he fell into the courtyard. When he got up from the ground, his head was covered in blood, and half of his face was a bloody mess. Suffering such a heavy injury, the guard captain was dizzy. He was so angry that he almost passed out. He staggered up, pointed at Ji Tianqing in the room, and cursed hysterically, "You little bastard! You dare to go against your superior, you're finished. Just you wait, I can't do anything to you. But someone will kill you." With that, the guard captain staggered and left, running as fast as the wind to the Department of Torture. Ji Tianqing didn't chase after him. Watching the guard captain's figure disappear into the distance, a playful sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth. Complain to the Department of Torture? That's exactly what I want. This thought flashed through his mind. He turned back to the table and sat down, waiting silently. At this time, Pu Chung, who had been sleeping soundly, woke up in a daze. He stretched, yawned, and looked sleepily at Ji Tianqing. He couldn't help but complain. "A man, what's wrong with you? You didn't even drink 2 mouthfuls last night, and you poured it all into my stomach. Oh no! Halfway through his words, his expression suddenly changed. He jumped up like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, and ran out in a hurry. We're finished. It's already morning, but we haven't left. The captain will definitely punish us. He had just run to the door when he saw that the door had been shattered and scattered on the ground. He was dumbfounded. He turned his head to look at Ji Tianxing. Seeing him still sitting there, Pu Cheng was dumbfounded. A man? What are you standing there for? What's with this door? Don't tell me I'm drunk again? Ji Tianxing waved his hand at him, and said with a light smile. It's not your fault, you should leave, I won't go. Pu Cheng stared at him with wide eyes, even more confused. You don't want to live anymore? Listen to me, come with me, let's go find the captain to apologize, and give him some benefits. Before he could finish, a vicious curse came from outside the courtyard. You want to apologize now? It's too late. Even if you kneel down and call me father, it's useless. Pu Cheng turned his head to look at the courtyard, and saw the captain of the guards, whose face was covered in blood, leading 2 executioners in blood-red armor, rushing over with a murderous aura. His expression changed on the spot, and he couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Damn it! Isn't it just being drunk and delaying the time? Do you have to report to the torture department? The captain of the guards rushed over with a sinister smile, and kicked him to the ground. He rushed into the room like a fierce tiger, pointed at Ji Tianxing and shouted, Sir Executioner, it's this bastard. He has no respect for the law, caused trouble when drunk, offended his superiors, and beat me up so badly. The 2 executioners, who were covered in the smell of blood, stepped into the room expressionlessly, and took out shackles without another word, wanting to tie up Ji Tianxing. Pu Cheng scrambled into the room, and quickly stopped the 2 executioners, anxiously bowing and apologizing. Sir, please wait. What did our man do wrong, for you to want to arrest him? Also, Sir Captain, we did delay the time. This is our fault. But you don't need to invite the torture department, sir. The captain of the guards glared fiercely at him, and shouted angrily. Pu Cheng, scram to the side. I'll settle this with you later. What is going on? Pu Cheng was stunned, and refused to move, feeling helpless and wronged. Ji Tianxing slowly stood up, patted his shoulder and transmitted his voice. It's not your fault. If you don't want to die, then move, don't speak nonsense. Pu Cheng turned his head to look at him, his eyes filled with confusion and surprise. He didn't dare to believe it. A man who had always been very weak, suddenly seemed like a different person. While he was in a daze, the 2 executioners tied up Ji Tianxing, and dragged him out of the room. Ji Tianxing did not resist, and walked expressionlessly towards the torture department. Pu Cheng looked at his back as he left. His mind was in a mess, and he felt that something was wrong. Chapter 2261. The guard captain stood outside the palace walls and watched as Ji Tianxing was escorted into the torture department. He raised his hand to wipe off the bloodstains on his face, revealing a smug grin. Little bastard. You want to fight me? I'll kill you. After viciously cursing, he turned around and left in satisfaction. Soon, 2 executioners escorted Ji Tianxing into the dark, bloody, and putrid torture department. There was a semicircular hall at the entrance. There were 6 passageways connected to it. There were several guards guarding the entrance of each passageway. The executioners escorted Ji Tianxing into the second passageway on the left. They headed to the deepest prison cell. The prison cell was not big. It was only 30 feet square. 2 dark red gemstone lamps were lit in the corner. All kinds of ferocious torture instruments were hung on the walls. 2 executioners tied Ji Tianxing to a dark red pillar. They used a few rusty and bloodstained chains to tie him up. Then one of them took out a dark purple soul-punishing whip, and said expressionlessly, "You violated the rules of Baiming Palace. You drank too much and offended your superiors. According to the law, you should be punished with 50 lashes and imprisoned for a month to reflect on your mistakes." The executioner waved the long soul-punishing whip, and whipped it at Ji Tianxing. Crack! Crack! A series of crisp cracking sounds could be heard. A dazzling purple light flashed. The vicious soul-punishing whip struck Ji Tianxing's body again and again, tearing his skin and flesh apart, and causing blood to spurt out. However, he kept his head down, and did not make a sound. After all, this body did not belong to him. He had already used a little trick to sever the connection between his divine soul and his body. Even if this body was cut into pieces, he would not feel any pain. However, the executioner was a little perverted. Seeing that he did not scream or twitch, he became angrier and waved the soul-punishing whip with all his might. You're quite stubborn. Since you don't know how to repent, I'll add another 10 lashes. Just like that, the original 50 lashes became 60 lashes. 100 breaths later, the execution was finally over. The executioner put away the soul-punishing whip and left the cell expressionlessly. As for Ji Tianqing's body, his clothes were ragged and his flesh was badly mangled. He had been beaten to a horrible state. But he didn't care. His hair was disheveled and he lowered his head, not saying a word. At first glance, it looked like he had fainted from the beating. But in fact, he was secretly probing the situation in the torture department with his soul. He had to find Ji Ke's location as soon as possible and determine which cell she was imprisoned in. Only then could he proceed with the next step of his plan. Embark Palace. In a hidden and spacious secret room. More than a dozen gemstone lamps were lit on the walls, illuminating the secret room in a dark red color. There was a stone table in the middle of the secret room. On it were several plates of spirit fruits and pastries, as well as a pot of spirit tea. For experts with different appearances were sitting by the stone table, waiting quietly. 3 of them were demon race experts. There was the great demon Saint Ling Xian in a black robe, the 3rd demon Saint Sheng Tua, and a newly promoted demon saint, a bald man wearing a skull mask. As for the 4th person, it was an Yu, who wore silver armor and looked like a half-lion man. Ever since they decided on the plan to wait for the rabbit to appear, the 4 of them had been hiding in this secret room, patiently waiting. After a few days, none of them were in the mood to talk. They all closed their eyes and rested. At this moment, the stone door of the secret room opened. A guard commander walked in, his expression respectful as he walked to Ling Xian's side and bowed respectfully. Ling Xian opened his eyes and asked in a low voice, "It's been a few days. Is there still no movement?" The guard commander replied honestly, "Reporting to Great Demon Saint, all of the guards are on high alert, guarding the perimeter of the godly mountain tightly. There is no trace of Ji Tianqing Baiming Palace and the torture department are the key areas to be monitored, but there are no abnormalities." Ling Xian nodded slightly and asked expressionlessly, "Just now I detected that someone went in and out of the torture department." The guard commander was startled and quickly explained, "Great Demon Saint, it's a guard of Baiming Palace. He was drunk last night and missed today's duty." After being reprimanded by the guard commander, this person took the opportunity to cause trouble and had a conflict with the guard commander. Thus, the captain of the guards invited 2 executioners to bring the guard to the torture department and punish him severely. Ling Xian frowned and his eyes flashed with anger. He warned in a dignified tone, "At such a critical moment, there are still people who let their guard down. Such a disregard for the law should be punished severely. Pass down the order, tell everyone to watch closely. If anyone makes a mistake, I will chop off his head." The guard commander quickly cupped his hands and said, "This subordinate obeys. This subordinate will take his leave." After bowing, he hurriedly retreated. The secret room returned to silence. An Yu, who was resting with his eyes closed, opened his eyes and looked at Ling Xian. He asked expressionlessly, "It's already the 6th day, but Ji Tianqing still hasn't appeared. I'm afraid he's scared out of his wits and doesn't dare to come." Saying this, the corner of his mouth hooked up in a self-deprecating smile. He shook his head and said, "But this is normal. Anyone with a brain would know that this is a trap." We were too confident and overestimated Ji Tianqing. Ling Xian frowned and didn't refute him. He smiled and said, "Lord and you don't worry. Don't we still have 4 days? After 4 days, if Ji Tianqing still doesn't appear, we will think of other ways. He's in our hands, so we have the initiative. There will be a way to deal with him." And you nodded and didn't say anything else. Anyway, if the great demon saint could deal with Ji Tianqing, he would help. If he had to go to Pillar of Heaven's mountains to deal with Ji Tianxing, he would definitely not agree. Unless the demon race paid 3 times the price. Ling Xian wanted to use him for his own selfish reasons. How could he not have selfish motives? How could he not be using the demon race? An hour later, Ji Tianxing finally found traces of Ji Ku, and only then did he stop casting the spell. If it was any other time, he would only need to use his divine sense to envelop the torture department, and he would be able to locate Ji Ku immediately. However, it was different now. There were elite soldiers inside and outside the torture department, and many sacred arrays were set up. There were also a few martial sages who were secretly using their divine sense to monitor this place. Once he used his divine sense, his identity would be exposed immediately. Therefore, he could only use his divine sense to sense the aura of the heavenly star chain. After all, he was the one who made the heavenly star chain and no one knew it better than him. He could clearly sense that Ji Ku was imprisoned at the end of the 3rd passage on the right, in the most heavily guarded cell. There were many soldiers and ambushes inside and outside the cell. On the surface, there were more than 30 elite guards and more than 10 demon kings hiding in the dark. Once Ji Tianxing appeared, he would be surrounded immediately. If a fight broke out, the martial sages hiding in Baiming Palace would arrive instantly. Chapter 2262. Waiting was a long time. Waiting helplessly for time to pass was even more torturous. An entire day passed. Ji Tianxing had been in the prison all this time, thinking about how to start the rescue. He simulated more than 30 methods in his mind, making deductions and predictions. The result, without exception, was failure. No matter what method he used, it was impossible to deceive the public and get away with it. The final result was that he would be in danger with Ji Ku, besieged by many experts. I still have 4 days. I need to calm down and think carefully, see if I can find another way. If in the end, I still can't find a safe way, I can only try my best. The devil saints of the devil race are nothing to worry about. Only in you and the ancestor devil god can threaten me. The ancestor devil god is sleeping in the blood sea abyss, trying to break through to the deity realm. If the commotion caused by the battle is too great, it will definitely appear if it truly threatens the survival of the devil race. As for Yu, he colluded with the devil race. I wonder if he's in Baiming Palace? If he's not, then I have nothing to worry about. Ji Tianxing thought silently, still maintaining his calm, patiently looking for an opportunity. At the same time, on the desolate plains south of the devil race's divine mountain, a streak of icy blue light suddenly appeared in the sky filled with black mist. Whoosh! Like thunder, the blue light tore a huge crack in the dark sky. In the next moment, a ball of icy blue light wrapped around 2 graceful figures, appearing out of nowhere in the sky. These were 2 peerless, cold, and otherworldly women. One wore an icy blue dress, her hair in a noble bun, and wore an ice crystal crown, her aura sacred and noble. The other wore a snow-white dress, her face beautiful, her temperament cold and elegant. Both of them were tall, peerless beauties, like fairies that had descended from the 9 heavens. All the women in the world, regardless of race, would pale in front of these 2 peerless beauties, no matter how beautiful they were. Without a doubt, these 2 were Luo Shui martial god and Yin Yao. The 2 stood high in the sky on the icy blue light, looking down at the desolate plains below and the divine mountain ahead. Luo Shui martial god's face was cold, his eyes deep and cold. Yin Yao had a worried look on her face, and there was a deep anxiety between her brows. Divine Lord, we heard that Ji Ku is being held captive in Baiming Palace. Tianxing arrived 2 days earlier than us. He must have already started his operation. Yin Yao said in a low voice as she looked at the pitch-black majestic palace at the peak of the sacred mountain. Luo Shui observed for a while before gently shaking his head. He said in a certain tone, "From the looks of it, the entire divine mountain is rather peaceful. It does not seem like a great battle happened. Tianxing was not a reckless person. He would definitely not kill his way into Baiming Palace. Based on my understanding of him, he will definitely find a way to hide in Baiming Palace and wait for an opportunity to strike. Without enough confidence, he won't show himself." Yin Yao also understood this and knew Ji Tianxing's style of doing things very well. However, when she heard Luo Shui's words, she could not help but cast a sideways glance at Luo Shui with a complicated gaze. Looks like the Divine Lord has already confirmed Tianxing's identity, and knows that he's Kenshin's reincarnation. She agreed to come with me to save Tianxing without hesitation. I'm afraid that's also the reason. I wonder what kind of conflict there was between Kenshin and Divine Lord Luo Shui back then? At this moment, dozens of black shadows suddenly appeared on the grayish-brown wasteland. Swish, swish, swish. More than 80 demons in black armor emerged from the ground and flew up into the sky with a murderous look on their faces. Apparently Luo Shui and Yin Yao had been discovered. However, the two of them had never planned to hide their tracks. With martial god Luo Shui present, they could attack Baiming Palace openly. What was there to be afraid of? Swish, swish, swish. In the blink of an eye, more than 80 black-armored guards rushed to Yin Yao and Luo Shui, and attacked with swords and knives. A cold light flashed in Luo Shui's eyes, and he was about to counterattack. At this moment, Yin Yao took a step forward and pulled out the reverse water divine sword. She said coldly, "Divine Lord, these minions are not worthy of your attack. Let me deal with them." Luo Shui nodded and said, "All right. You've just broken through to the martial sage realm. Let me see what you're capable of." By the time she finished speaking, Yin Yao was already wielding the reverse water divine sword, transforming into an icy blue light as she charged towards the group of black-armored guards. Sky Star Rain. Yin Yao formed a sword art with her left hand, and waved the reverse water divine sword with her right hand. Her clothes fluttered and starlight filled the sky. At this moment, she had the peerless elegance of a fairy and the majestic aura of a peerless goddess. She was simply perfect. The starlight in the sky bloomed and turned into hundreds of dazzling meteors that fell from the sky. More than 80 black-armored guards were immediately drowned by the meteors in the sky. Bam, bam, bam. A series of muffled sounds echoed in the sky above the wasteland. The attacks of the guards were directly smashed by the meteors. Then, the dazzling meteors blasted the crowd into pieces. Blood and flesh splattered everywhere. Those who were hit by the starlight could not escape the fate of having their physical bodies and spiritual souls shattered. They did not even have the time to scream before they were killed by the meteors in the sky. Boom, boom, boom. The meteors in the sky landed on the wasteland and created hundreds of deep holes in the ground. They connected to form a huge abyss. Monstrous clouds of dust flew out, covering the sky for 300 miles. The ground shook violently and cracks appeared. The sacred mountain, which was a few hundred miles away, was also affected and shook violently. Yin Yao kept the reverse water divine sword and looked down at the ground expressionlessly. There was nothing in the sky in front of her. More than 80 black-armored guards had turned into pieces of flesh and blood and scattered in the ruins and deep holes. She had only used one move to kill more than 80 demon clan guards in an instant. Such terrifying combat strength was not much weaker than Ji Tianxing's. Luo Shui watched carefully. Her eyes lit up and a trace of gratification appeared on her delicate face. Very good. She nodded to Yin Yao and stepped across the sky. She took Yin Yao and went straight to Baiming Palace. At the same time, the guards and powerhouses in Baiming Palace were alarmed. Thousands of elite demon clan guards were lying in ambush on the majestic sacred mountain. Everyone quickly activated the mountain protection array, and activated a blood-red light shield with a radius of 300 miles to envelop the sacred mountain. At the same time, more than 500 black-armored guards were divided into more than a dozen teams. They rushed murderously toward Yin Yao and Luo Shui to intercept them. Yin Yao's eyes immediately turned cold. She held the reverse water divine sword and rushed forward fearlessly to meet the attack. Luo Shui followed closely behind. She waved her hand and shot out ice blue light pillars to kill those black-armored guards. Of course, she was always paying attention to Yin Yao's situation and would never let her get hurt. Chapter 2263. Two peerless beauties, gentle as water, faced more than 500 fiendish demon guards. It was a weird scene, but what was even weirder was that the two beauties were invincible. But those fierce and ferocious devil guards fell from the sky and landed on the wasteland like dumplings in a pot. In just 100 breaths of time, The battle was over. Only Luo Shui and Yin Yao were left in the sky. Both of them were safe and sound. Aside from the bloodstains on their clothes, they were unharmed. More than 500 demon guards were all turned into minced meat, scattering on the wasteland. No one was left alive, and no divine soul could escape. Such a horrible scene fell into the eyes of many demon guards. Suddenly, the remaining hundreds of demon guards all hid on the mountain, not daring to rush out of the mountain guarding array. In the Biming Palace on the mountain peak, the warning horn sounded. Several thousand demon race experts and elites quickly gathered together, assuming the most vigilant defensive posture. Everyone knew that a strong enemy was coming, and a great disaster was coming. Not only that, even Ling Xian, and Yu, and the others who had been hiding in the secret chamber were alarmed. Everyone suddenly opened their eyes. They looked at each other and sneered. Ling Xian said meaningfully, listening to the noise outside, "It should be him. Lord and Yu, I have said that he will definitely come." And Yu nodded with a smile, and said with a murderous look, "In that case, let's end this quickly, and get rid of this big trouble as soon as possible." Batua and the big bald demon saint also rubbed their hands, and murderous aura surged from their bodies. "Let's go and meet him." Ling Xian waved his hand, and let everyone out of the secret chamber. After a while, the four of them came to the square outside the Biming Palace, and looked down at the situation at the foot of the mountain. Around the square, near the blood-red light shield, a large number of demon guards and elite experts gathered, and they were all ready for battle. When a guard captain saw Ling Xian and the others appear, he quickly went up to them and bowed respectfully. Ling Xian looked down the mountain and asked in a dignified tone, "What happened just now? Is Ji Tianxing here to kill us?" The leader of the guards was startled for a second. Then he said in a strange tone, "Reporting to the great demon saint, there are indeed two powerful warriors who have killed hundreds of guards in just a few moves. But those two people are not Ji Tianxing, they are two human women." Suddenly hearing this news, Ling Xian suddenly frowned, and his expression became somewhat puzzled. "Ji Tianxing didn't come? Were there only two women? Are you sure you're not mistaken?" The guard captain hurriedly nodded and said in a confident tone, "Great Devil Saint, how could this subordinate be wrong? Those two women swaggered over, and everyone saw it with their own eyes." Ling Xian's expression became more and more unsightly as he muttered to himself. Ji Tianxing didn't appear, but he let these two women come here openly? What was he trying to do? Was this a covert scheme? Who were those two women? Martial god Luo Shui? As he thought of this, a hint of fear and worry flashed across his eyes. However, he glanced at An Yu beside him, and immediately felt much more at ease. With An Yu, a god realm warrior, there should be no problem even if the ancestor demon god didn't appear. Ling Xian thought in his heart, and dispelled his worries. At this moment, an icy blue and a silver-white dazzling light flew over from the sky above the wasteland. Swoosh! Swoosh! In the blink of an eye, the two dazzling lights flew to the peak of the sacred mountain and stopped. After the light faded, two graceful and cold figures appeared. Luo Shui and Yin Yao stood in the sky, 3,000 feet away from Ling Xian and the others, separated by a layer of blood-red light shield. Although there were only two of them, facing the entire sacred mountain and thousands of demon warriors, they didn't show any fear or worry. On the contrary, their auras were quite strong and domineering, and they didn't take the others seriously at all. An Yu, Matua, and the others all realized that something was wrong, and frowned in confusion. Why are there two women? Where's Ji Tianxing? Didn't he kill his way here? Why don't I see him? Ling Xian also frowned and muttered to himself, "Damn it, Luo Shui is really here. That bitch, she has to stick her nose in everything. If An Yu can kill her, it would be great." Ling Xian didn't forget that half a year ago, Luo Shui only sent a clone here, and it brought disaster to Biming Palace. Now that Luo Shui's real body was here, wouldn't it turn the world upside down? Thinking of this, Ling Xian looked at An Yu and transmitted his voice. "Lord An Yu, those two women are not simple. The one in the white dress is Ji Tianxing's wife. The woman in the blue dress is the Luo Shui Divine Nation's Divine Master, the Luo Shui martial god. If we can kill Luo Shui, the Luo Shui divine nation will definitely fall apart, and we can immediately lead our troops south to seize the endless territories. Of course, the Luo Shui divine nation is the weakest among the three divine nations. Luo Shui's strength is also the weakest among the three martial gods, and he doesn't pose a threat to you at all. Ling Xian said it casually, but he deliberately exaggerated the gains from killing Luo Shui in order to instigate in you. However, and you had suffered at his hands before, so how could he be so easily fooled? Oh, is that so? And you raised his eyebrows, and a playful smile appeared on his face, but he didn't say anything else. He didn't pay attention to Luo Shui's strength, nor did he care about the temptation Ling Xian mentioned. In any case, he acted as if it had nothing to do with him, and he wasn't in a hurry to make a move. Ling Xian saw through his thoughts, and couldn't help but feel angry, but he couldn't be too hasty. At this moment, Luo Shui looked down at Baiming Palace from above, and said in a cold voice, Ling Xian, this god came here today only to say one thing. Listen well. Immediately hand over Ji Tianxing and Ji Ke, and this god can treat it as if nothing happened. Otherwise, this god doesn't mind destroying the entire divine mountain. The cold and deep voice spread throughout the entire divine mountain, and reverberated between the heavens and the earth. The formless divine sense pressure caused many of the demon race experts to feel fear, and their faces showed fear. Ling Xian didn't doubt Luo Shun's words at all. Previously, Luo Shun had only sent a clone, and it had destroyed Baiming Palace. Now that his real body had arrived, destroying the divine mountain would be a piece of cake. However, Ling Xian had an idea, and he immediately had an idea. He looked at Luo Shui with a cold smile, and with an arrogant attitude, he laughed wildly and said, Ha ha ha. Luo Shui, you are too arrogant, and you must be blind. Why don't you see who is beside this lord? This is Lord in you, a true God realm expert. With Lord in you here, don't you dare be presumptuous or else you will die on the spot. Ling Xian's aura was very confident and overbearing. However, An Yu, who was beside him, immediately frowned, and his face was as black as the bottom of a pot, and his eyes flashed with a cold light. Chapter 2264. Ling Xian's words were indeed effective. Luo Shui immediately frowned and looked at An Yu beside him. His cold eyes were filled with intense hostility and murderous intent. An Yu knew that it would be difficult for him to escape today. He cursed Ling Xian in his heart for being despicable, but he could not fall out with him on the spot. He could only remain silent. At this moment, Luo Shui coldly shouted, Ling Xian, I gave you a chance. Since you're so eager, I'll fulfill your wish. As her voice fell, she waved her palms and sent out two mountain-sized icy blue palm shadows toward the blood-red light shield. Back then, in order to avenge Luo Li, she had sent her doppelganger here and destroyed Baiming Palace. Of course, she knew that the protective array of the sacred mountain was a holy array. Only the abyss of the blood sea behind the sacred mountain was protected by a divine array. Bam! Bam! With a deafening sound, the two icy blue palm shadows slammed into the blood-red light shield. Instantly, the blood-red light shield within a radius of 300 miles trembled violently from the impact. Layers of ripples spread out. The icy blue palm shadows shattered, and turned into cold light that scattered in the sky. However, the places that were hit by the icy blue palm shadows had also sunk into two huge craters, and the surroundings were filled with dense cracks. At most, 2 more hits and the blood-red light shield would be smashed to pieces. Seeing this scene, the thousands of demon elites on the sacred mountain were shocked and worried. The expressions of Ling Xian, Ma Tuo, and the others also changed drastically, revealing deep worry. Without hesitation, Luo Shui raised her hands again and punched the blood-red light shield. Endless icy blue brilliance crazily accumulated in her fists and condensed into 2 palace-sized fist lights. The fist lights were condensed to the extreme and seemed to be solid. They emitted a bone-chilling aura and contained the power to destroy heaven and earth. Boom! Crack! When the 2 fist lights hit the blood-red light shield, an earth-shattering explosion sounded in the sky and spread for thousands of miles. 2 huge holes were blasted into the huge blood-red light shield on the spot. The cracks in the surroundings quickly spread out like a spider web. Endless icy blue brilliance and blood-red light shards burst out in the sky and spread out along with the shock wave. The mountain protecting grand array of the sacred mountain was thus destroyed by Luo Shui. Shi and Yun Yao's figures flashed, and were about to enter the two gaps. When he saw this, Ling Xian immediately shouted anxiously, "Quickly stop them! We can't let them enter the divine mountain." He was well aware that Yun Yao was one thing, but once Luo Shui entered the divine mountain, the consequences would be unimaginable. The shockwaves from the battle between the two sides were absolutely destructive, enough to destroy Beiming Palace once again. In fact, the entire divine mountain would be razed to the ground. At that time, the demon race would suffer heavy losses, and it would not be as simple as losing a few thousand elite guards. However, Ling Xian's angry shout rang out, and the order was passed down. None of the thousands of elite experts and guards around the square dared to move. Previously, everyone had witnessed Luo Shui and Yun Yao killing more than 500 guards in an instant. Who would be so stupid as to rush out and throw away their lives? When Ling Xian saw that the guards were timid and afraid, he was filled with rage. He rushed into the sky with Batuo and the newly promoted demon saint. "Luo Shui, I will not repeat the same mistake today. Don't you dare act atrociously here." As he spoke, he did not forget to send a voice transmission to An Yu. "Lord An Yu, this woman is one of the three martial gods. No matter what, you must stop her. If you let her destroy our plan, then our cooperation will be gone, and your situation will be worrying." In fact, even if Ling Xian did not remind him, An Yu understood this point. After all, he was an invader. If he wanted to gain a foothold here, he needed the help of the demon race. Therefore, he also flew into the sky without hesitation and waved his hand to attack Luo Shui. "Crimson Moon Kill!" An Yu shouted in a low voice. His eyes turned into two dark red flames that flickered. His body surged with a dark red brilliance that soared into the sky. His palms shot out endless killing intent, condensing into a huge crimson moon that blasted towards Luo Shui. Ling Xian, Batuo, and Baldi also used their secret techniques, releasing a bloody light that covered the sky and earth, enveloping Luo Shui's figure. Luo Shui was surrounded by four powerhouses, but she was still fearless. Her body emitted an icy brilliance as she coldly shouted with an expressionless face, "Virtuous like water, the will of heaven punishes the demon." As she spoke, her palms struck out a mysterious spell, drawing a dazzling blue light in front of her. Finally, when she put her palms together in front of her chest, her entire body burst forth with endless icy blue light. Boom! Following a deafening explosion, a monstrous cold light exploded like a mushroom cloud. The bloody light and demonic shadows that filled the sky were instantly dispersed by the icy blue brilliance. Even the crimson moon that An Yu had released was shattered on the spot. Instantly, An Yu, Ling Xian, Batuo, and the others were all sent flying by Luo Shui, their faces full of shock. Especially An Yu, his eyes suddenly widened as he shouted in disbelief, "Luo Shui, the weakest of the three martial gods, actually has such powerful strength." At this moment, he suddenly doubted Ling Xian's words. There was only one thought in his mind. Ling Xian was a complete liar and scoundrel. Not a single word from his mouth could be trusted. However, now was not the time to pursue this matter. Since An Yu wanted to cooperate with the demon race, he had to stand on the same side as Ling Xian. He was very unconvinced and charged at Luo Shui once again, pulling out the dark red sword at his waist and slashing out several sword lights that could split the heavens and earth. The blood-red sword lights were very strange and contained an invisible power, as if controlling the heavens and earth to suppress Luo Shui. Luo Shui felt the pressure increase. Only now did she realize that An Yu's methods were extraordinary, and that the power he used was also very strange. She solemnly waved her hand and struck out a mysterious spell, slapping out hundreds of icy blue seals with her palms. Ling Xian also charged over, releasing a monstrous sea of blood and 9 demonic shadows to surround Luo Shui. Bang bang bang. The icy blue seals and the blood-red sword lights collided, creating a loud explosion. Just as the blood-red sword lights were defeated, Ling Xian's spell attack struck Luo Shui. She was besieged and had no choice but to use her secret skills to block and counterattack. Ling Xian and Yu temporarily stabilized their position and methodically launched their attacks to restrain Luo Shui. On the other side, Ba Tuo and the big bald demon saint knew that they could not threaten Luo Shui, so they joined forces to attack Yun Yao. From their point of view, Yun Yao had just broken through to the martial sage realm, and only had the strength of a rank 1 martial sage. She should not be difficult to deal with. If they could take Yun Yao down, they could use her life to threaten Luo Shui. This way, there would be a turn for the better. However, when the two of them joined forces to attack Yun Yao, they realized that things were not as they had imagined. Although Yun Yao only had the strength of a rank 1 martial sage, her combat strength was extremely strong. Not only had he mastered all kinds of secret techniques, but he also had a genuine divine sword. Chapter 2265. And Yu and Ling Xian besieged Luo Shui. Ba Tuo and Abaldi besieged Yun Yao. The two sides fought fiercely in the sky above the wilderness. The sky fell and the earth cracked, and the sun and moon lost their light. The violent and devastating shockwaves spread in all directions like stormy waves. The deafening noises kept exploding, reverberating between heaven and earth. Thousands of demon guards and elites were holed up on the sacred mountain to watch the battle. A battle of this level was not something they could interfere with. Even if they were caught in the aftermath of the battle, they might die on the spot. Inside the Department of Torture, since the commotion of the battle spread, many guards hurried to the outside of Baiming Palace. The experts and powerhouses lying in ambush were also on high alert, guarding against the invasion of foreign enemies at all times. As a result, the internal defense power of the Department of Torture was weakened by a lot. Soon, a quarter of an hour passed. The battle outside had not stopped, and it was becoming more and more intense. The entire sacred mountain kept shaking, causing the demons inside and outside the Department of Torture to feel uneasy. At the same time, Ji Tianxing, who had been silent all this time, suddenly opened his eyes. He looked towards the south with bright eyes, as if his eyes could see through the palace and darkness, and saw the battle in the sky above the wilderness. The earth-shattering sounds of battle and the surging waves of dermic powers were extremely familiar to him. It's Luo Shui and Yao Yao. Why are they here? His expression changed immediately, and his eyes flashed with deep surprise. He immediately understood after thinking for a while. I clearly trapped Yao Yao in the secret room. Could it be that she broke my array and escaped from the secret room? As for Luo Shui, Yao Yao must have invited him. Thinking of this, his mood was very complicated. He felt both guilty and touched. Luo Shui and Yao Yao are fighting with Ling Xian and Yu, attracting everyone's attention. This is the best opportunity for me. Ji Tianxing no longer hesitated, and attacked without hesitation. His whole body lit up with a bright golden light, and he suddenly burst out with a surging power. With a series of ding-ding-ding sounds, the chains wrapped around his body instantly shattered into a pile of debris. His figure flashed and rushed to the door of the cell. He kicked the door made of magic iron. Clang! The pitch-black door, which was more than 3 meters tall, was directly kicked away by him and twisted into a ball like a fried dough twist. The sudden turn of events woke up the guards at the entrance of the passage. The guards in blood-red armor roared angrily and rushed over while brandishing their swords and sabers. Ji Tianxing turned into a black shadow and rushed forward as fast as lightning. Swish! Swish! As he passed through the crowd, he flicked out golden sword chi from all 10 of his fingers, stabbing at the guards' foreheads. The next moment, he rushed out of the dark passage and disappeared into the darkness. As for the guards, their bodies stiffened as they stood rooted to the ground. After a while, they fell to the ground with a thud, their vitality completely gone. There was a finger-sized bloody hole in each of their foreheads, and demon blood was constantly flowing out. The sword chi released by Ji Tianxing pierced through their foreheads, and directly destroyed their divine souls. Clean and neat, fast, ruthless, and accurate. After 2 breaths, Ji Tianxing turned into a black shadow and rushed into the 3rd passage. At the end of this passage, there was a spacious cell where Ji Ku was imprisoned. The passage and the outside of the cell were heavily guarded, and there were more than a dozen tribulation stage demon lords among them. When Ji Tianxing rushed into the passage, The guards had already realized that the situation was not good. More than a dozen armored guards, waving their swords and halberds, rushed over murderously. At this moment, Ji Tianqing no longer had any scruples. There was no need for him to hide his identity and strength. "You're courting death." A cold light flashed in his eyes as he shouted in a low voice. At the same time, his body turned into an illusory black shadow and rushed toward the group of guards with rolling thunder and sword light. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. A burst of dazzling sword light flashed, accompanied by the sound of thunder, illuminating the passage. When his figure rushed to the door of the cell, the dozen guards had already fallen to the ground. All of them were covered in blood, and there were many broken limbs scattered on the ground. Their divine souls had been destroyed by Ji Tianqing, and they were all dead. Ji Tianqing rushed to the door of the cell and looked at the black stone door. The door of this cell had obviously been specially modified, and there were several saint-level array formations on it. Even if Ji Tianqing wanted to break the array, it would not be possible in a short time. Moreover, the 10 demon lords lying in ambush outside the door had already released earth-shattering Dharma spells. A few demonic dragons condensed from blood-red light, and dozens of sword shadows surged over like a monstrous flood, immediately drowning his figure. Ji Tianqing's body bloomed with golden light, forming an oval shield. Boom, boom, boom. A series of muffled explosions reverberated in the tunnel. The attacks of the 10 demon lords were all blocked by the golden shield, and they could not hurt Ji Tianqing at all. A powerful and violent shockwave exploded in the tunnel, causing cracks to appear on the ground and walls. The entire torture department began to shake from the tremors. There were a few blood-armored guards around, but they only had the strength of the Essence Soul Realm, and they were shattered on the spot. The 10 demon lords did not stop, and once again released terrifying Dharma spells, blasting toward Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing was completely enraged. A black light flashed in his right palm, and he drew out the Sword of Burial of Heaven, 7-star sword. With a furious roar, he swung his sword and slashed out 49 starry sword lights at the 10 demon monarchs of various forms. Swish, swish, swish. The dazzling sword lights were like shooting stars cutting through the darkness, blooming with the most dazzling brilliance. In the blink of an eye, those demon lords wearing black robes, armor, or looking like demonic beasts were torn apart by the sword lights. The bodies of the 10 demon lords were destroyed, and none of them were spared. The souls of 6 of them were also killed, and only 4 souls escaped in a sorry state. Ji Tianqing did not chase after them. He stared coldly at the door of the cell, holding the Sword of Burial of Heaven with both hands, and slashed down fiercely. "Open for me." Boom. Crack. Amidst a deafening boom, the starry sword light, which was 100 feet long, split the door of the cell in half, and shattered rocks flew everywhere. The terrifying impact caused half of the torture department to collapse, turning it into a pile of ruins. Ji Tianqing passed through the broken stone door, ignoring the falling rocks, and rushed into the cell. He saw a blood-stained copper pillar on the altar in the corner of the cell. A woman with disheveled hair and bloody body was tied to the copper pillar by a dozen chains. She had suffered some kind of cruel torture, and she did not look human, and she was unconscious. Chapter 2266. Without a doubt, that bloodied, frail woman was Ji Ku. Moreover, the 8 demon lords also had the mission of destroying the corpse. Ling Xian had already made plans. If Ji Tianqing were to rush here to save Ji Ku, he would not be able to escape. Those 8 demon lords were about to activate the array and use the soul-incinerating purple fire to completely kill Ji Ku. Ji Tianqing instantly understood when he saw this scene. A towering fury immediately exploded in his chest. His eyes were as red as blood, and his entire body surged with towering fury. Die! He roared like a great bell, and brazenly charged at the 8 demon lords like a raging ball of bloody fire. Duan Yu! Heaven-seizing palm. He recklessly swung the Sword of Burial of Heaven, and slashed out 2 dark golden sword lights at the 4 demon lords on the left. His left hand fiercely swatted out a golden dragon claw at the 4 demon lords on the right. The 2 sides were too close, and Ji Tianqing's furious attack was also extremely fast. Those 8 demon lords were unable to dodge at all, and were instantly struck by the sword lights and dragon claws. Bam bam bam. A deafening boom exploded like the rumbling of thunder. 3 demon lords were cut in half by the sword lights, and dark purple demon blood spurted out. The other 4 demon lords were directly smashed into meat paste by the dragon claws. The last demon lord was relatively luckier, and scrambled to hide in a corner of the cell. Before he could rejoice, Ji Tianqing stabbed him in the forehead. His head exploded, and his soul shattered on the spot. He died on the spot. At the same time, a destructive shockwave spread out in all directions, instantly shattering the entire prison cell. With a loud rumble, the torture department that was on the verge of collapse finally collapsed. Countless ravines split open in the ground, and the palace collapsed, smashing down countless rocks and bricks. Within a radius of 3,000 meters, only broken walls and rubble remained. Endless smoke and dust soared into the sky, obscuring this area in a state of chaos. However, amidst the surging gray fog, there was a dark purple flame that was more than 10 meters tall that was particularly eye-catching. It was the bone-chilling, terrifying soul-incinerating purple flame. Not only could the fire burn up flesh and blood, the most vicious effect of the fire was that it could penetrate the protection of the body and magical equipment and directly burn the soul. Obviously, Ji Tianqing was still one step behind. Before the 8 demon monarchs died, they successfully activated the array on the altar and released the soul-burning purple fire. Their mission was to not let Ji Ke live even if they had to die on the spot. Chua! Ji Tianqing passed through the smoke and gravel, rushing to the front of the soul-burning purple flame. He watched helplessly as the 3 zhangtal purple torch enveloped Ji Ke's body. Her blood-stained robes and long hair were instantly burned to ashes by the purple flames. In the next moment, her body would be reduced to ashes. Ji Tianqing's heart was burning with anxiety. He immediately made a hand seal and released rays of starlight into Ji Ke's body. Star attraction art. In the next moment, the heavenly star chain in Ji Ke's mind was awakened and activated by him. Shua! The heavenly star chain burst out with cold, dazzling starlight, enveloping Ji Ke from the inside out. The starlight formed an oval-shaped shield, protecting Ji Ke and isolating her from the soul-incinerating purple flame. She was temporarily safe. Ji Tianqing finally heaved a sigh of relief. He hurriedly activated the power of the heaven-mending orb, and struck out a dense white light with his palm. Whoosh! The sacred and majestic white light enveloped the 3 zhangtal soul-incinerating purple flame, and quickly devoured it. The surging soul-incinerating purple flame instantly disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye, and was extinguished in the blink of an eye. Ji Tianqing hurriedly took out the sword of burial of heaven, and cut off the chains around Ji Ke's body. He then carried her down from the copper pillar. Only then did he realize that the copper pillar was covered in chopstick-long spikes that had pierced Ji Ke's back full of hideous bloody holes. Cuckoo! Ji Tianqing was both furious and distressed. He couldn't help but exclaim in a low voice. However, Ji Ke's soul was too heavily injured. She was still unconscious and had yet to wake up. Ji Tianqing turned his head and looked around. He saw hundreds of demon race experts rushing over from all directions. The demon race guards and elite experts charged over with murderous intent, letting out deafening battle cries. He didn't have the time to save Ji Ke. He could only put her into the Sword World, and have the Golden Mountain King settle her down in peaceful Earth City. Then he sent an order to Ancestor Sanju, telling him to hurry to peaceful Earth City and treat Ji Ke's injuries. By the time he finished arranging everything, more than 800 demon race guards and experts had already closed in and surrounded the ruins. Kill! Kill him. This person isn't one of us. He's Ji Tianqing in disguise. Everyone, don't hold back. Work together and kill him. The captain of the guards and the demon monarchs shouted at the top of their lungs. Ji Tianqing lowered his head and glanced at himself. A man's physical body was already in tatters. He simply abandoned this body and took out his main body from the sword world. Whoosh! In a flash of light, his soul returned to his main body. He transformed into a handsome white-robed youth and appeared in the air above the ruins. The badly mutilated body of the demon lay powerlessly in the ruins, covered by dust. Ji Tianxing placed his left hand behind his back and gripped the sword of burial of heaven with his right hand. His sharp gaze swept over the surroundings. Everyone must die. He shouted darkly, his body erupting with killing intent that could shake the heavens. It had been many years since he had been so angry. His killing intent had almost taken over his mind. Ji Ke's tragic fate filled his chest with endless anger and killing intent. Only by killing all the demons on Divine Mountain could he calm down a little. He suddenly raised the sword of burial of heaven and pointed it at the dark sky. He roared, 10,000 swords of stars heed my command. Kill. Hearing his words and seeing his reaction, many demons were stunned. Everyone frowned in confusion, not understanding what he was doing. Just by pointing his sword at the sky and shouting he could kill people? Everyone scratched their heads in confusion. Only a few demon clan experts immediately had a bad premonition, and a strong sense of fear rose in their hearts. In the next moment, the dark sky suddenly lit up with starlight like the stars of a summer night. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Tens of thousands of rays of starlight fell like meteors, carrying with them the power to destroy the world. At the peak of Divine Mountain, the night sky within 1,000 miles was immediately illuminated. Only now did the demons realize that it was tens of thousands of giant swords of stars. Everyone was shocked and wanted to turn and flee. But the invisible sword essence that suppressed the world enveloped everyone and made them unable to move. Boom, 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 boom. There was an earth-shaking explosion. Tens of thousands of sword lights came down and instantly drowned out the ruins, including the nearby Beiming Palace. Immediately, thousands of demons were drowned in starlight and turned into dregs by the sword lights. They died without a complete corpse. The torture department also ceased to exist. The ruins on the ground turned into endless smoke and dust, leaving behind only a huge abyss-like pit. Chapter 2267. Before this, all the demons knew that Ji Tianxing was the greatest enemy of the demon race. This person was extremely strong. On the northern battlefield, he had once slaughtered millions of demons. But just how strong was he? The demons on the Divine Mountain had never seen it with their own eyes, and did not have a clear idea. After all, they had not rushed to the front lines to participate in the war. Now, they finally saw it with their own eyes. Ji Tianxing only used one sword move to command 10,000 starry sword lights to instantly kill thousands of elite demons. Not only was the torture department completely destroyed, even more than half of Beiming Palace was destroyed and turned into ruins. Such a terrifying and peerless power left everyone dumbstruck. When they came back to their senses, only endless fear and lingering fear remained in their hearts. Many people even secretly rejoiced that they had not been in the torture department, so that they could live until now. Even though the demons were cold-blooded, cruel, brave, and violent. But in the end, they were still intelligent creatures, and they would still feel fear. After a long while, when the dust and magic power in the sky had dissipated, Ji Tianxing's figure appeared and stood murderously in the sky. He looked coldly in the distance at the demon guards and experts near Beiming Palace. Wherever he looked, the guards and experts of the devil race subconsciously backed away. Such a scene made many demons feel deeply humiliated. Dozens of hot-blooded and fearless devils couldn't bear this silent humiliation. They shouted and dashed towards Ji Tianxing. Everyone, don't be afraid, let's attack together. For the glory of our race, we will not retreat. Kill. No matter how strong he is only one person. We have many people, we are not afraid of him. Don't forget the great demon saint's reward. Whoever kills him will be given the position of deputy commander, and 500 million in cultivation resources. More than 40 demon experts charged at Ji Tianxing without any regard for their own safety, not forgetting to shout at the top of their lungs. But they were immediately met with tragedy. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Ji Tianxing waved his right hand and raised the burial of heaven, sending out dozens of cold lights. More than 80 starry sword rays instantly streaked across the sky and pierced those devil experts. With a series of pung 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 muffled sounds, more than 40 demon experts were torn into pieces by the sword light on the spot. Flesh and blood swirled in the air, and the dazzling sword light interweaved to form a magnificent and shocking scene. With a single move, everyone was smashed into pieces, their bodies and souls destroyed. Seeing the fate of these demon race experts, everyone kept quiet out of fear, a chill running down their spines. Originally, there were still a few demons who were infected by their hot-bloodedness, and a strong fighting spirit ignited in their hearts. However, after witnessing the tragic deaths of these people, their hot-bloodedness and fighting spirit were instantly extinguished. Ji Tianxing's murderous aura still hadn't dissipated. He turned into a golden shadow and rushed into the crowd, starting a massacre. Swing your sword. Heaven cleaving sword. Heavenly dragon palm. Broken moon sword. He waved the sword of burial of heaven with his right hand, and slashed out an earth-shattering sword light. His left palm struck out an enormous dark golden dragon claw, continuously slamming into the crowd. Loud rumbling sounds erupted continuously, reverberating endlessly on the mountain peak. Dazzling spell light also illuminated the peak of the divine mountain. Violent shock waves spread out in all directions, blowing up the gravel and dust on the ground. In a short 10 breaths of time, the crowd was scattered in all directions. 80% of the demon race were killed on the spot, dying without an intact corpse, turning into dregs all over the ground. There weren't many survivors left, and they were also scared out of their wits, fleeing in panic. In the eyes of the demon race, Ji Tianxing, this white-clothed killing god, was more terrifying than the world's most terrifying devil. Apart from the great fiend sage and the ancestral fiend god, probably no one could stop him. But Ji Tianxing didn't let those demon race go. Holding the sword of burial of heaven, he pursued and killed. Boom. Boom boom. Bang 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 bang. Sword light bloomed unceasingly, and muffled sounds rang out continuously. Batch after batch of demon race collapsed in a pool of blood, dying miserably. Ji Tianxing went on a killing spree on the mountain peak, as if he entered a no-man's land, sweeping everything before him. About 15 minutes later, he killed more than 2,000 demon race members in succession. The few hundred demon race members who were lucky enough to survive all fled in all directions, hiding in various concealed places on the divine mountain. If he pursued them one by one, it would definitely waste a lot of time. Ji Tianxing didn't want to waste time, so he gave up on the pursuit. He raised his head to look at the bloody light barrier in the sky with a radius of 150 kilometers. Heaven-splitting sword. He held the sword of burial of heaven with both hands and unleashed all of his power, slashing out a 1,000-foot-long giant sword with all his might. Bam! The dark golden giant sword ruthlessly struck the bloody light barrier, exploding with an earth-shaking bang. Immediately, a huge crack was split open on the bloody light barrier. Ji Tianxing's figure flashed, passing through that crack, and flew to the sky above the wasteland. He frowned as he looked in front of him, seeing in Yu Lingxian and the rest besieging Luo Shui and Yun Yao. Luo Shui was fighting against two opponents, but he wasn't at a disadvantage at all. He was actually able to fend off in Yu and Lingxian's attacks. Her blue dress was stained with a few streaks of blood, as if she was slightly injured. However, Yu and Lingxian were severely injured, their bodies covered in blood. Especially Lingxian, there were at least 10 wounds on his body, all of which were so deep that his bones could be seen. His black robe had long been soaked in dark purple demon blood. However, Yun Yao was in a precarious situation. She was besieged by Ma Tuo and Debaldi, and even with the water-reversed divine sword, she was at a disadvantage. After all, she had just broken through to the martial sage realm. Ma Tuo was a rank 7 martial sage, while Debaldi was a rank 2 martial sage. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing didn't hesitate to rush over and join the battle. 5-colored divine lightning. He teleported behind Debaldi, and his left palm shot out a 5-colored lightning beam. He waved the sword of burial of heaven with his right hand, and a dazzling cold radiance shot out. Debaldi sensed that he was about to die, and his expression changed drastically. He waved a pair of large hatchets, and a blood-red radiance filled the sky. Bam! With a muffled sound, the blood-red light blade blocked the 5-colored divine lightning, and sparks filled the sky. Debaldi heaved a sigh of relief, thinking that he had dodged a bullet. However, in the next instant he felt a sharp pain in his chest, and his expression changed. Boom! A cluster of dazzling starlight suddenly exploded in his chest, turning into a huge mushroom cloud that soared into the sky. Debaldi's sturdy body was instantly smashed into pieces, and a large amount of blood splattered out. A dazzling purple spiritual soul flew out from the broken pieces of the blood rain, and ran away in a panic. Originally, he had wanted to run back to the holy mountain to heal himself. However, the peak of the holy mountain was a mess, and Biming Palace and the punishment department had been destroyed. He didn't dare to run back to the holy mountain, as that would be suicide. However, even if he ran to the empty north, it would be useless. Ji Tianqing teleported and caught up with Debaldi, and he waved his sword. Bam! Chapter 2268. After Baldi was killed, only Matua was left. The pressure on Yunyao was greatly reduced. She waved the reverse water divine sword and slashed out sword shadows. She was locked in a fierce battle with Matua. Ji Tianqing turned around and charged toward Matua with his sword. He joined forces with Yunyao to deal with him. The two of them performed their ultimate sword techniques. Sword shadows covered the sky and drowned Matua's figure. Matua was instantly in a life-or-death situation. He was forced to retreat as he withstood the thousands of sword lights. Even so, he was still covered in wounds and bloody holes from the stabbing of the sword light. After a short 10 breaths, Matua was sent flying by Ji Tianqing's sword after exchanging a few blows. There was a terrifying gash in his chest. His ribs and internal organs were clearly visible. Dark purple demon blood gushed out like spring water and sprinkled in the sky. The heart-wrenching pain caused him to let out a shrill scream that resounded through the sky. His strength had weakened a lot due to his serious injuries. His fighting spirit was gradually fading. Yunyao alone was enough to deal with him. With Ji Tianqing, who was invincible below the martial god realm, there was only death for him. Thinking of this, he wanted to retreat. He wanted to turn around and run. On the other side, Ling Xian and Yu could barely fight Luo Shui to a draw. Ling Xian was only half a step away from the divine realm, and Yu was a genuine martial god realm expert. When the two of them attacked, and Yu was the main force and Ling Xian was the support. According to the current situation, Ling Xian would be killed in half an hour at most, and Yu would also be injured by Luo Shui. Although he would not be killed, he could only run for his life. At this moment, a furious roar suddenly rang out from the abyss of the sea of blood behind the divine mountain. Roar! The deep and powerful roar contained endless anger and killing intent. The thousands of demons at the peak of the sacred mountain were all in awe when they heard the roar. They all looked toward the back of the sacred mountain. In the next moment, an overwhelming dark red light rose from the blood sea abyss. A figure as huge as a mountain and as black as ink rose into the sky. It was 3,000 feet tall. It was like a huge black mountain. Its body was terrifyingly strong, and it emitted overwhelming demonic chi. It opened its mouth and spat out endless demonic clouds that covered thousands of miles. The area immediately became a gloomy ghost realm. The world was pitch black. Only this towering ogre that had suddenly appeared had the appearance of a minotaur. It had 3 heads as big as mountains and 6 pairs of blade-like wings on its back. They were half black and half red. His 4 muscular arms contained the power to destroy the world. It was as if he could crush a mountain and shatter the stars in the sky. When this giant devil appeared, everyone stopped fighting at the same time. At the top of the mountain, the thousands of surviving demon clansmen all looked relieved and excited. They all knelt down and kowtowed to Li Mu. Welcome, Ancestor Fiend Celestial. In the sky, Ling Xian, Batua, and the rest were also overjoyed. They smiled as if they had survived a disaster. They also bowed respectfully to the Ancestor Fiend Celestial. In their minds, since the Ancestor Fiend Celestial had appeared, he must have broken through to the deity realm. In that case, Luo Shui and Ji Tianqing were nothing to be afraid of. And Yu retreated to the side and looked at the Ancestor Fiend Celestial expressionlessly. Ever since he entered the North Underworld Mountain, he had heard many legends about the Ancestor Fiend Celestial, but he had never seen him in person. All along, Ling Xian had represented the ancestor Fiend Celestial to negotiate with him. Now when you finally saw the ancestor Fiend Celestial's power, he could not help but feel relieved. At least the ancestor Fiend Celestial was not weak. He was qualified to cooperate with him. At this moment, the ancestor Fiend Celestial looked down at Luo Shui, Yin Yao, and Ji Tianxing. He roared with a thunderous voice. Luo Shui, you lowly servant, you dare to come and offend us? Luo Shui looked at him coldly and said coldly, previously, this god was in seclusion and only sent a clone here. It is a pity that I could not kill you on the spot. Today is different. This god's true body has arrived and will definitely take your life. The ancestor Fiend Celestial opened his wide mouth and laughed contemptuously. Haha. You are really confident and arrogant. It is a pity that you will not have the chance in this lifetime. When he finished speaking, his body ignited with blood fire and released an incomparably powerful aura. Formless demonic chi enveloped a radius of 10,000 miles. The divine mountain shook violently, and the ground shook violently. The sky was filled with endless black chi. The demons felt his aura and cheered excitedly. As for Luo Shui, Ji Tianxing and the other two, their brows furrowed tightly as their expressions turned extremely grave. This is the aura of the deity realm. Damn it! The ancestor Fiend Celestial has already recovered to the deity realm? It has not even been a year. How can he recover to the martial god realm? Without a doubt, the ancestor Fiend Celestial had successfully recovered to the deity realm and became a true Fiend Celestial. At this moment, Ji Tianxing finally understood. When the ancestor Fiend Celestial started the war and sent millions of demons to attack the Luo Shui Divine Kingdom, it was all for today. Using war and killing to gather a huge amount of blood, chi, and souls, it was able to recover to the deity realm so quickly. The ancestor Fiend Celestial looked down at Luo Shui and Ji Tianxing and laughed sinisterly. Haha. How is it? Are you very surprised? Are you regretting now? Too late. Today is my first battle after recovering to the deity realm. I will use you as a sacrifice. As he spoke, the ancestor Fiend Celestial slowly raised his two arms. Two dazzling flames lit up in his huge palms. One was blood red and the other was dark purple. After the flames dissipated, two ferocious-looking demonic sabers that were 10,000 feet long appeared. The blood-red demonic saber on the left was straight and narrow. Half of the blade was open, and the back of the blade was densely packed with saw teeth. The dark purple demonic saber on the right was curved like a crescent moon. The blade was very wide, and at first glance it looked like a huge axe. The two demonic sabers were surrounded by surging demonic flames, and emitted a mysterious and terrifying aura that seemed to be able to shake the heavens and earth. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianxing's eyes flashed with a cold light, and he muttered to himself. This is the ancestor Fiend Celestial's natal treasure, the 9 Disasters demonic saber? Damn it! It has already recovered to the deity realm, and can now fully display the power of the 3 calamities and 9 disasters. The ancestor Fiend Celestial of the ancient era had been called the Grim Reaper by the various races of the world. Wherever the Grim Reaper went, he would bring about the 3 calamities and 9 disasters, massacring the world and exterminating all living things. Now that the ancestor Fiend Celestial had returned to the deity realm, he would definitely bring about a shocking massacre and calamity to the Xinwu continent. At the same time, the ancestor Fiend Celestial laughed loudly and brazenly waved his 2 arms. Holding the 9 Disasters demonic saber, he ruthlessly slashed out 2 blade lights that could split the heavens and earth. Chapter 2269. A ray of blood-red saber light and a ray of purple saber light. Both of them were tens of thousands of feet long, and they were covered in demonic flames as they slashed through the sky. Luo Shui, Ji Tianxing, and Yun Yao were immediately enveloped by the boundless demonic chi and light flames. Such an earth-shattering demonic aura caused the blood of over 1,000 demonic tribe members to surge as they cheered excitedly. Even An Yu could not help but be surprised as he was secretly shocked. At the moment of life and death, Yun Yao did not hesitate to use the water-reversed divine sword, and sent it in front of Luo Shui. She knew that with her strength as a rank 1 martial sage, It would be useless even if she had the water reverse divine sword. After all, she would not be able to unleash the power of the divine sword, let alone defend against the ancestor demon god. Luo Shui did not hesitate as she grabbed the water reverse divine sword, and her body was covered in blue flames. She formed a sword seal with her left hand, and waved the divine sword with her right hand. Instantly, 36 rays of icy blue light pierced towards the two saber lights in the sky. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. 36 huge icy blue swords that were tens of thousands of feet long were arranged according to the position of the Big Dipper star, and they contained boundless mysteries. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing's eyes flashed with a strange light as he thought, Big Dipper star cloud sword? I only used it once, and she actually remembered it by heart and cultivated it to the Great Dipper star cloud sword. Bam 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 bam. The sword array formed by the 36 rays of sword light collided with the two saber lights, and there was a series of loud bangs that shook the 9 heavens. At that moment, the saber light and the sword array collapsed at the same time, and turned into millions of light fragments that rained down like a storm. The destructive shockwave instantly swept through a radius of 1,000 miles. The huge holy mountain was shaken by the shockwave, and there were hundreds of cracks in it as rocks and soil collapsed. At least 300 demonic tribe members were killed on the spot by the shockwave. Even the two great demon sages, Batua and Ling Xian, were pushed back dozens of miles. Blood flowed from their mouths and noses as they panted heavily. Only Yin Yu and Luo Shui, the two God Realm experts, remained in the sky and did not retreat. As for Yin Yao, she had already retreated hundreds of miles under Ji Tianxing's protection, and was not injured. The power of the battle between martial gods was terrifying. Even the aftermath of a battle could destroy everything within 1,000 miles. The ancestral Fian Celestial's attack being blocked was within his expectations, and he was not surprised at all. It stared coldly at Luo Shui as it sneered. One of the 3 great divine masters is nothing more than this. As it spoke, it once again waved the 9 difficulties devil blade, sending out 2 shocking blade lights that descended from the sky towards Luo Shui. The 3-kilometer-long saber light on the left was surging with blood-red light and raging flames. This was one of the 9 disasters, the karma of slaughter. It contained the aura of slaughter in the world, and it could only be cultivated by slaughtering millions of living beings. The saber light on the right was surging with black light, and contained billions of wisps of black qi. This was one of the 9 disasters. It could kill all gods and corrode all living things. When the blood god wreaked havoc on the continent, he created a highly toxic plague based on this item. The power of the 2 saber lights was extremely ferocious. Before the saber light descended, the soaring saber intent contained within it caused everyone present to be filled with fear. It was as if they saw death approaching. Luo Shui had not experienced the ancient divine war, and had only heard of the legend of the ancestral Fiend Celestial. However, she did not know how ferocious the death god was. Now she had finally witnessed it with her own eyes. However, she was fearless. Her left hand formed a seal as she stepped onto the Big Dipper constellation. Her right hand waved the divine sword, instantly sending out 99 icy blue sword lights. The sword lights contain the profundity of the 9 palaces extreme array. They activated the power of the 9 heavens thunder, and attacked the 2 saber lights. Kaboom! Another thunderous boom reverberated in the sky like rolling thunder. The sword light and saber light shattered once again, sending out destructive shockwaves. The surviving demon race guards and experts on the mountain peak had learned their lesson this time. They had long scattered in all directions or burrowed into the divine mountain to hide. However, the divine mountain was also on the verge of collapse, and half of it collapsed. After another 3 to 5 attacks, the entire divine mountain would collapse and turn into ruins. However, the ancestral Fiend Celestial turned a blind eye to this. His eyes were fixed on Luo Shui as he waved the 9 difficulties devil blade again, and launched an attack. Luo Shui did not have the time to care about anything else. He used all his strength to defend himself. At the same time, Ling Xian and Batua flew to Yin Yu's side and shouted excitedly, "Lord Yin Yu, now is the best time to kill Ji Tianxing. What are you waiting for?" Indeed, Luo Shui was unable to protect Ji Tianxing and Yin Yao as he fought the ancestral Fiend Celestial with all his strength. And Yu turned his head and looked towards the south. He saw Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao standing side by side in the sky above the wasteland 100 miles away. They were looking at Luo Shui with concern. Seeing this, and Yu's lips curled into a sneer. He said softly, "All right. Wait until I kill Ji Tianqing. You will have to cooperate according to the agreement." A strange look flashed across Ling Xian's eyes, but he still maintained a smile on his face. He nodded without hesitation and replied, "Lord and Yu, don't worry. I will definitely abide by the agreement." And Yu looked at him meaningfully. Then he turned into a red light and flew across the sky towards Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao. Ling Xian looked at his back as the corners of his mouth curled up into a playful sneer. Then he and Ba Tuo followed and joined forces with Yu to surround Ji Tianqing. "Ji Tianqing, Luo Shui can't even fend for himself now. Your time has come." Ling Xian stared at Ji Tianqing with a cold look. He revealed a smug sneer. Ji Tianqing looked at him, and Yu expressionlessly. He said in a deep voice, "Two bastards colluding with each other." And Yu frowned immediately. His entire body surged with killing intent. He shouted coldly, "Brat, you were lucky to escape back then. Today, I will not repeat the same mistake. Give me your life." Just as he finished speaking, he pulled out his sword. Red light filled the sky and enveloped Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao. Ling Xian and Ba Tuo did not stay idle. They joined forces to perform the secret skill of the demon path. Light shadows filled the sky as they attacked the two of them. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao quickly counterattacked. One of them slashed out a shocking sword radiance while the other released dozens of starlight pillars. The two of them fought in the sky above the wilderness. Their figures kept teleporting and flashing in the sky. The light shadows that covered the sky kept colliding with each other, and there were loud bangs. In just 100 breaths, the two of them had exchanged more than 300 blows. Ling Xian and Ba Tuo were severely injured. Their bodies were covered with wounds and blood. However, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao's injuries were more serious. Their white robes were stained with blood. Their hair was disheveled, and they looked miserable. After all, the two of them were only martial sages. They had no problem dealing with Ling Xian and Ba Tuo. However, they were no match for Yu. The two of them were in a precarious situation. If they continued to fight, they would most likely be killed by Yu. Ling Xian and Ba Tuo laughed arrogantly. They were extremely pleased with themselves. At that moment, Luo Shui, who was fighting with the ancestor demon god, suddenly teleported over. "Tianqing, Yun Yao, the two of you go first. I will cover you." Chapter 2270. Ji Tianqing also knew that he would not be able to gain the upper hand if they continued fighting. Luo Shui could not defeat the ancestral fiend Celestial, and Yu by herself. The only thing he could do now was to retreat from this place and make plans later. However, it was not that easy for him to retreat with Yun Yao. Luo Shui had just forced Yu and Ling Xian to retreat when the ancestral fiend Celestial unleashed 3 saber lights that could split heaven and earth. The 3 saber lights were of different colors and contained different calamities. However, their power was equally terrifying. Luo Shui could not ignore the 3 saber lights. She could only wave the reverse water divine sword and block with all her might. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Yu and Ling Xian made a comeback and caught up with Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao, who were retreating. The two of them were once again surrounded by Yu, Ling Xian, and Ba Tuo. After exchanging a few blows, Yun Yao was sent flying by Ling Xian's palm strike. Ji Tianqing was about to rescue her, but he was also repelled by Yu's sword. He spat out blood as he flew dozens of miles away. Yu and Ling Xian laughed sinisterly as they pounced towards Ji Tianqing with murderous intent. They wanted to kill him on the spot. Ji Tianqing gritted his teeth in anger as a raging fire burned in his chest. He had no choice but to accept reality. It was basically impossible for him to escape with Yun Yao. He could only use that trump card to successfully escape. As he waved his sword and used his ultimate technique to block the trio's attacks, he secretly took out the small golden pagoda. At this moment, Luo Shui had dispelled the ancestral fiend Celestial's attack and rushed over to save Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao. She shot out hundreds of saber lights with a cold expression and sent Yu flying. Ling Xian and Batua were also struck by the saber lights. Their bodies were almost instantly killed. Hideous wounds were left on their bodies as demonic blood spurted out. The two of them screamed as they flew out and crashed into the wasteland, creating a deep crater. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ji Tianqing quickly teleported to Yin Yao's identity and released his magic power into the small golden pagoda without hesitation. Swoosh! The small golden pagoda released a dazzling golden light that enveloped him and Yin Yao. Before his figure disappeared, he looked deeply at Luo Shui and transmitted his voice to her. "We will leave first. You must take care of yourself. Do not linger in the battle." In the next moment, the golden light enveloped him and Yin Yao. Luo Shui turned her head and looked at the same time. She was relieved to herself to escape to save Yin Yao to escape. Following that, she used two more ultimate moves to block the ancestral demon god's attack and repelled and used counterattack. She didn't stay any longer and disappeared in a flash. In the next moment, she teleported to the end of the wasteland to the end of the wasteland to the end of the wasteland. She was to escape to Yin to escape and Yu was filled with indignation as he chased after Luo Shui for nearly 10,000 li. However, he had lost track of Luo Shui's aura and could only give up in anger. To retreat. To the back mountain divine mountain it was still standing behind the divine mountain. After a long time, its figure retreated into the abyss of the Blood Sea. After all, it had relied on the power of the Blood Sea abyss to recover to the godly realm. It had just broken through to the godly realm a few days ago, so its demonic foundation was not stable yet. It was still in the midst of cultivation. Once it left the Blood Sea abyss, its power would be chaotic and unstable. Not only would it weaken, but there would also be the danger of its divine power going berserk. Therefore, it would not leave the Blood Sea abyss in the short term. It needed to further strengthen its demonic foundation. The ancestral fiend god returned to the abyss and went into hibernation. The world gradually calmed down. The smoke and demonic aura that covered the sky gradually disappeared. The power of 9 disasters that permeated the heavens and earth also disappeared without a trace. On the crumbling divine mountain, more than 300 demons who had survived the calamity revealed joyful expressions. On the wasteland that was riddled with holes, the demons who had fled in panic could finally stop to catch their breath. The heavily injured Ling Xian and Batua supported each other in the sky. They looked at the wreckage of the divine mountain. Their expressions were ugly, and their eyes were filled with anger. Ji Tianqing, Luo Shui, 2 damned beasts. The divine mountain has been destroyed to such an extent. How long will it take to recover? Ling Xian cursed in exasperation. His face was somewhat distorted. Batua was also filled with indignation. He said miserably, "Half a year ago Luo Shui's doppelganger came to cause a ruckus and destroyed Sacred City and Beiming Palace. It took us several months to recover. Now more than half of the divine mountain has been destroyed, and so many guards and elites have died. It will take at least a year to recover." At this time, Ling Xian saw a dark red light in the sky to the south. He hurriedly warned Batua, "And Yu has returned. Later, don't say anything wrong. Although the ancestral fiend god has recovered, its power is still unstable. We were not able to kill Luo Shui and Ji Tianqing. We cannot let down our guard. We can still use Yu and the experts under his command." Batua nodded in understanding. Soon, Yu flew back to the sky above the divine mountain. He came to Ling Xian and Batuo's side. His face was gloomy. 2 dark red flames burned in his eyes. Clearly, his anger had not subsided. Ling Xian knew the answer, but he deliberately asked, "Lord Yu, did you catch up to Luo Shui?" Yu's face was dark. He did not speak. Ling Xian nodded and said to himself, "It seems that she escaped. But this is normal. After all, she is one of the 3 divine lords. Lord, please be patient. Let's deal with the aftermath first, then discuss how to deal with them." Yu looked at him expressionlessly. He said in a low voice, "Ling Xian, dealing with martial god Luo Shui is your demon race's matter. My goal is only Ji Tianqing and the 72 cities. I have done what I should do. Mobilize 500,000 warriors as soon as possible. I want to take the 72 cities as soon as possible. Our plan cannot be delayed any longer. Otherwise. Before he could finish, Ling Xian shook his head with a bitter smile. Lord and you, if you succeed in killing Ji Tianxing, I will fulfill my promise. However, Ji Tianxing has not been eliminated. He is still a great threat to us. He then pointed at the devastated Divine Mountain and said helplessly, and as you can see, the Divine Mountain of my race has been destroyed by this disaster, and has been reduced to ruins. My top priority is to rebuild the Divine Palace and repair the Divine Mountain. Oh right, Lord has many strong warriors under your command. Shouldn't you borrow some to help me rebuild my home? I don't need too many. Just 20 people will be enough. Seeing Ling Xian's reaction, Yu frowned and scolded angrily. Bastard, go to hell. After scolding, he flung his sleeve angrily and flew away. When he reached the sky above the Divine City, he summoned a warship and rushed to the south. Ling Xian looked at the end of the wasteland. His mouth curved into a mocking sneer as he muttered to himself. Humph. Want to take advantage of my clan. Chapter 2271. South of Dark North Mountain. Jingshan Region 100 Origin City. Inside the dignified city lord's manor, there was a gloomy atmosphere. The guards and maids were very careful, not daring to make any noise when they walked, and even speaking in hushed tones. This was because everyone knew that when Lord Yu returned in the evening, his face was very gloomy, and his entire body was wrapped in anger. At this time, no one dared to provoke him. Within Yu's study, he was sitting in front of his desk, fiddling with a dark silver diamond-shaped crystal in his hand as he expressionlessly looked out the window. It was obvious that he was thinking about something extremely important. The guard captain, who was wearing black armor and missing 2 legs, stood respectfully beside the desk. Both of them were silent. After a long time, the guard captain could not help but speak to Yu. Captain, we can't continue like this. The demons clearly don't trust us, and they're even plotting against us. We need to increase our military strength and report this news to the general. Otherwise, we won't even be able to defend the 5 southern regions, let alone occupy the 72 cities. Yu remained silent, still weighing the pros and cons. The guard captain continued to persuade him. As you know, the general's flagship is currently leading a team of guards to this star field. As long as you send out a message, the general will definitely bring the guards over. At that time, not only will we be able to seize Dark North Mountain, but the entire Xinwu continent will be ours. Yu finally reacted and turned to glare at the guard captain. He sneered and asked, Are you sure that Xinwu continent will still be ours after the general arrives? If the general knows that we've discovered a vast and rich world, will he only bring a team of guards? There are also other warships, at least 30 captains, and close to 10,000 soldiers. All of them will flock over. At this point, Yu angrily hammered the table and sneered. At that time, the general will certainly be able to rule the entire continent and become the master of this world. However, the territories and resources of the 3 divine kingdoms will be cleanly divided by those 30 bastards. I've lost more than half of my men, so how can I compete with them? If things go wrong, the general might even take my men apart and assign them to other warships. As for me, I can only be the assistant of the other captains. The guard captain was shocked, and he finally understood Yu's worries and concerns. He hurriedly shook his head and consoled. Your Excellency, you're overthinking. You are the first to discover this world. The general will definitely reward you handsomely. At that time, not only will we not split up your guards, we will even reward you greatly and allocate more guards to you. Yu did not speak. After a moment of consideration, he nodded slightly and said, This is possible. But I can't believe it. I have to be prepared. The guard captain asked in confusion, Sir, what do you mean? Yu said in a low voice, Of course, the news has to be reported to the general. When he receives the news and arrives in this world, it will take about a year. Moreover, this world was sealed by the power of the gods. Even with the general's strength, he could not force his way in. He could only find an opening to enter. I still have a year, so I can make some preparations in advance. At that time, when the general descends into this world, I will become his most trusted and most valued confidant." The guard captain's blood boiled as he listened. His heart was filled with anticipation. He nodded repeatedly and said, "That's right. We must not lose to the other battleships. We must be the heroes of the Third Fleet." And you did not hesitate any longer. He channeled a ball of blood-red light into the dark silver diamond-shaped crystal. Then he held the diamond-shaped crystal in his hand and entered the dark secret chamber. Through a mysterious array, he sent the diamond-shaped crystal out. Swoosh! A dot of starlight flew into the sky and disappeared in the blink of an eye. North of the ruins of God, in the Jiutian Ten Absolutes Tower in the Yin-Yang secret realm, Ji Tianxing and Yin Yao opened their eyes one after another and looked at their surroundings. They saw an ancient altar that was hundreds of meters tall beneath their feet. On the cold black stone floor, there was a mysterious array diagram carved on it. There were 18 demon god statues around it. All of them looked ferocious, and they exuded an ancient and powerful aura. Around the altar was a spacious and bright palace. It was at least 1,000 feet in radius. On the walls of the palace, there were gemstone lamps. There was a huge star map on the dome. It emitted dazzling starlight and illuminated the entire palace. Yun Yao could also sense that every light spot in the vast star map seemed to be a real star. She raised her hand to tidy up her messy hair and asked subconsciously, "Tianxing, where are we?" Ji Tianxing sat beside her and looked at her with concern. He used his divine sense to check her injuries. When he heard Yun Yao's question, he replied without raising his head, "We are in a divine pagoda. The divine pagoda is in the mystic realm in the north of the ruins of God. This place is absolutely safe. Even the martial gods can't find it." Yin Yao was startled and asked subconsciously, "Really? You didn't leave it behind, did you?" Ji Tianxing waved his hand and chuckled. "Of course not. This is a divine pagoda left behind by the demon god king. I haven't figured it out yet." Yin Yao immediately became interested and asked, "If you haven't figured it out, how can you teleport directly from the North Underworld mountain to the ruins of God? How did you get this divine pagoda?" Seeing that Ji Tianxing was engrossed in it, she shook her head gently and said, "Don't worry. I'm only slightly injured. It's nothing serious." Ji Tianxing checked her and found that her injuries were indeed not serious. However, he was still a little worried and asked, "What about the children? Did you hurt them?" "Don't worry. The children are not so delicate." Yin Yao smiled and comforted him gently. Ji Tianxing was relieved and told her the process of getting the Jiutian Ten Absolutes pagoda. Yin Yao was engrossed in it, and her mood fluctuated. In the end, after listening to Ji Tianxing's narration of the entire process, she finally revealed an expression of relief. She sighed in disbelief. "I really didn't expect that such a powerful and heaven-defying artifact would be hidden on this seemingly ordinary continent." Ji Tianxing nodded in agreement and said, "Yes, I left in a hurry back then and didn't see this world clearly. I missed a lot of things. Now that I have a new understanding of this world, I realize that the Five Elements world is not simple. At least, it's different from the ordinary inferior worlds." Yin Yao suddenly thought of something and immediately revealed a worried expression. She asked, "Oh right, where's Ji Ku? Did you save her?" Ji Tianxing nodded and said, "Don't worry. When you and Luo Shui were killing, I had already destroyed the torture department and saved Ku Ku. Her injuries are too serious and she's recuperating in the sword world. Let me circulate my energy and recuperate for a few days before casting a spell to save her." Yin Yao nodded slightly and said, "That's good too. If you need my help, call me." You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.